Okay, I call this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee back to order. This meeting is taking place using the GoToMeeting electronic platform. All participation is taking place remotely, not in person. The meeting is being televised and recorded by Chelmsford Telemedia, interested community members to access and watch. Meeting members were encouraged to submit comments and questions through the school committee members or superintendent of schools, Dr. Jay Lang, via email. These comments will be read under public participation portion of the agenda. If anyone watching this meeting live has questions or comments to share, they're encouraged to email one of us during the meeting, and we'll read those during our second public input session at the end of the meeting. So welcome to this meeting of the Chelmsford School Committee. For those of you tuning in from home, we are reconvening our meeting from having briefly met in executive session, discussed negotiations with labor unions. So before we get going, we just need to do a quick roll call of attendance. So Donna Newcomb.
Put your mic on.
Here.
Jeff Doherty.
Here.
John Moses.
Here.
Maria Santos.
Here.
Superintendent Lang.
I'm here.
Assistant Superintendent Hirsch.
Here.
We have Paul, Town Manager Paul Cohen. Here. Here. And we also have our Chelmsford High School representatives, so Katrina Janakis.
Here.
And Sudeep Gubala.
Yeah.
Here, great. Okay, and I'm sorry, Joanna Johnson Collins, Director of Finance.
Here.
Here, great. Okay, so to start with, we the approval of our meeting minutes from our meetings on April 7th and April 13th. So just a reminder, the 7th was our regular meeting and the 13th was a brief meeting we had about voting on whether to continue online during April break. So it's okay, we'll just take one motion to approve both sets of minutes.
I make a motion to approve the April 7th and April 13th regular school committee minutes. And that's it.
Second.
Any seconds? Seconds. Okay, any comments or corrections on the minutes? Okay, so roll call vote, Jeff?
Yeah, aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. Donna?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
And aye, so 5-0 to approve the minutes from the 7th and the 13th. Okay, so next we're going to hear from our Chelmsford High School representative. So Katrina, I'll let you go first if you'd like.
All right. Well, the online learning has been very different for all of the students, but we're all adapting pretty well. And all of our work is being assigned by our teachers. Normally, from the beginning of the week, all due Friday. And we are having online meetings for each class.
Sudeep?
Yeah, and so as Katrina said, it's definitely a different experience, something we've never done before, but I think it's been pretty well. Teachers generally have like a scheduled meeting time during a week, so you'll know which day you should be on, which time you should be on. Some teachers will assign assignments every day. Some teachers will give you the whole week. It really manages how you manage your time, and that's really a key aspect of like not having too much time at the end of the week.
All right. Do any committee members have any questions for our Chelmsford High School representatives?
Outside of the class time, if you have questions on the work that you've been assigned, what do you guys end up having to do?
So either you can email your teacher or you can leave a private comment on the assignment, but normally they prefer for you to email them because they don't get a notification from the private comments.
And also some teachers have like office hours, so like they'll reply immediately during those hours. So email is probably the best way to contact them.
So do you feel like you're getting enough support, from the teachers, like if you're struggling with an assignment or whatnot, in order to be able to complete it by the deadline?
Yeah, definitely.
I think they reply in time generally.
Thank you.
Can I
Yep, Maria.
Okay. Are you finding that most students in the class do join the online meetings? What do you see as the participation?
So I wouldn't say majority. I wouldn't say everyone joins, maybe like 75% for some classes. It kind of varies on the class and the level of the class, I think, depending on who comes and who doesn't. It's usually the same people who go on, so.
Do you find that the teachers still send reminders, for people to go ahead and join, or what's being required of the students in order to get that pass? If they
Well,
miss.
sometimes it's hidden in tabs. Like when we have meetings, they're hard to find sometimes, which is kind of confusing for me personally, but they do a pretty good job of explaining what you have to do, and they do reply quickly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? How's the workload compared to when you were in school?
So I'd say depending on the teacher, some of them have been assigning more than I expected. It's definitely manageable though, but some of the classes have been a lot and some of them have been manageable. That's what I'd say.
Yeah, same with me. It's a little bit less than what we normally do, but it's assignments that we understand, and it's the same concepts and the same routine that we would do if we were in school. So I like that a lot.
Dr. Hirsch,
Anybody else?
I just had a question for Dr. Hirsch as a kind of a follow-up. Hi. Is there any opportunity towards the end of this that we could get feedback from the students just about how things went or where some of the problems that they may have encountered are, so that, as we move forward, we kind of perfect our remote learning plan, that, we'll have that, advice or suggestions?
Yeah, I don't see why not. I do know that because I'm in several of the classrooms, I wanted to make sure I had one on each level. I will tell you there's a few teachers that are just giving a quick hit survey each week within the Google Classroom, which is kind of cool. Like quick questions like, is there too much work? Is there not enough work? What would you need for support? So it's almost like 2 or 3 questions weekly so they can get that information. So we can certainly do like a larger look at that. And I do know that some of the schools did want to send something out to their students, right, as just a school to get an idea of what's happening. And I think that would be very interesting at this point, because if, let's just say, we ever needed to like lean on this again, why not have what's working and what isn't working and see where we can make refinements. But it's kind of cool. I love the fact that some of these teachers are just doing it for their class, right? Not worrying about the whole school, just to get an idea of where they were at each week. So there are a variety of different angles that we could go at this. But yeah, I would love to do that.
All right, terrific. Sudeep, it's really nice to see you again. We've missed you.
Yeah, me too. It's good to see you guys.
I just want to thank you both for coming on, and you're welcome to stay on. And what's the Westwood?
Yes.
We are going to get some updates from the superintendent. But then, if whatever you need to go, that's fine. Maria had one more question, I guess.
Yes, I do. It's again for Dr. Hirsch. When Donna was talking about that in terms of what works and what doesn't work, for the lower classes, for the elementary and the middle school level, I think it would also be important to get parental input because they have to be more supported. These guys, they know what they're doing and they can give us this feedback. But I think at that level, it would be important to do that to see how it worked and how it didn't. And I think we're going to have very little in terms of determination of how it did or didn't work in terms of what they got out of the class, because we only have pass-fail. So we're not going to be able to really determine, assess as parents what did happen, what didn't happen to our students. So I think it would be very important to bring in the parents into that younger class group.
Yeah, I would agree. Like in terms of the data, we do have some, benchmarking that we left with. We're going to have to find out when we come back where the students stand when we start doing the diagnostic piece when they walk through the door to see any gaps where we have to focus on and any changes in both pacing guides and syllabi.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else before we move on to our next item? Okay. All right, so next up then is our public comment section. So if any members have received any emails with questions or comments, feel free to share them. So we'll start with Jeff. Do you have anything?
No, nothing.
Okay, John?
Nothing.
Okay, Maria?
Well, I did receive letters and comments. I think some of the letters were addressed to Donna as well. So I don't know. How do you want to handle it, Donna?
Go ahead.
Okay. I think I'm not going to read the complete letter, just talk about some of the comments? And do you only want stuff that's to do with the agenda for this week and then leave
Yeah, at
towards
this
the
point,
end the other comments? Is
Yeah.
that better for you? Okay.
that'd be better. Yep.
So, I think in terms of that, I would say that these letters that I have here are all better left till the end.
Okay, great. Donna, anything?
As we're looking at the update on the status of our school closures, I do have some comments from parents around maybe needing a little bit more guidance in terms of what the expectations are. I know that when the phase 1 and 2 were rolled out by the commissioner, we talked about some of the content that we would be using in the remote learning process, and that being material that's already been covered. So I think sometimes parents are looking for some guidance. Is that the case? Are teachers moving on to new material? What do they do when their kids are struggling to be able to learn this new material? How can they get some help? The other thing is, what happens if you have students who online learning is prohibitive in some ways, maybe because of a learning disability or processing issues or whatever it might be. What are the alternatives for that? So really those two things, what are the parameters around the content? And then what do you do for kids who for the online learning that it's just a real struggle?
All right, great. The only one I got, I'm sure Maria also got, so I'll wait till the end and let her read that one at that point. So we'll move on then to new business. So Superintendent Lang, if you want to go from here.
Yeah, and Donna, I don't want you to think I'm not addressing your question. I think some of that stuff might come out when I report on the closure. And then if not, we can chat about it at the end of the meeting, but I took notes.
Yeah, that was what people had emailed me about.
Okay. Sure. Heading into the, and it is good to see everyone back again. I'm glad the students were able to join us. It's been a few weeks without you guys, so thanks for hanging in there. We do actually have a lengthy agenda, and as I was putting this together, we just had a lot of business type items to get caught up on that we haven't really focused on over the last couple of meetings. So a lot of these are kind of procedural votes. They're items that we've actually talked together as a school committee about previously, but just need to bring some closure to. So the first one we have before us this evening is a ratification of a memorandum of agreement with our building custodians. So to provide a little bit of content or context for you on this, we actually employ as a district 9 building custodians in our schools that are our employees. They typically work Monday through Friday during the regular school day in our schools. And then 4 or 5 years ago, that's been 4 years ago at this point, we ended up contracting out our cleaning services in the evenings at our elementary, our middle, and our high school. So we actually have 3 different companies that provide cleaning services for us at night. Those companies are hired by their own company. They're under contract with us. We don't have to bargain with those employees. But our own group of 9 that we actually hired, again, at the same time we did the contracting of the cleaning services, that group did unionize a couple of years back. We ended up doing an initial contract with them that is set to expire on June 30th, 2020, so just a couple of months from now. John Moses and Maria Santos served as the school committee's members on the negotiating subcommittee. I helped with that negotiation on our end. And then the Chelmsford Federation of Teachers and a couple of the custodians served as their negotiating team. And over the course of a couple of sessions, we reached agreement on a new contract for them. So I'm going to actually review those highlights with you this evening. So the new contract before you tonight is for a new contract to run for 3 years, beginning July 1, 2020 through June 30th of 2023. All of the existing language we have in our current contract will roll over unless it's actually modified by this agreement. Any of the non-wage type items will take effect upon execution of the contract, which would be July 1. So if there were any language items that were changed, it'll take place next year. But the nuts and bolts of the agreement basically was a 3-year deal. On the wages with this particular group, we had originally negotiated a salary schedule, and we're recommending that that salary schedule be modified by 2.5% in year one, 2.5% in year two, and 2.5% in year three. We also updated some language in the contract that just clarifies when the custodians were actually eligible for overtime. And that's after working a 40-hour week that they're eligible. But we have language now that also accounts for what happens during a holiday, when there's a holiday that falls in their work week, vacation, things along those lines. So the contract clarifies that. We did remove the agency fee language from the contract. As you may recall, that originally got negotiated in when agency fees were still allowable. Now they are not. So that language was removed. We also worked with them to remove an article around the evaluation system and a kind of a review panel at the end of the process. That language will now mirror what's in our teachers' contract, so we have some consistency from contract to contract. We did agree to allow this group to have a New Year's Eve day off as a recognized holiday. Several of our other bargaining groups have that, and school is not in session on that day. So we did agree to that. And then the last language provision we agreed to was to work with the unit around making cell phones accessible for business purposes, so that basically the custodians don't have to utilize their personal cell phone number, give that out to vendors or any people that might be working in the schools or renting the schools, so that there can be some privacy between their personal cell phone numbers and a work number. But those are basically the elements of the agreement. As I indicated, it was a relatively swift and smooth negotiation. I think the custodians have actually done a very nice job. They're one of a couple of employee groups who have actually been in the schools over this closure, continuing to provide some continuity of service, cleaning the buildings. They're going to be the ones on the front line to help us reopen the buildings when that time comes. So I'm very happy to recommend this memorandum of agreement for a new 3-year contract for our group. And again, I appreciate John and Maria working with me on putting this together. So happy to answer any questions. Individuals may have comments. If I can help you in any way, please let me know.
Okay. Any comments, questions? Anybody have at this point?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Town Manager Paul Cohen. I'm going to vote against this agreement, and it doesn't reflect anything regarding the building custodians. It's just where we are today on April 22nd regarding the budgetary and economic uncertainty ahead of us. And my concern is I don't feel comfortable voting an agreement 3 years forward from this July 1st. All of our other groups are 2 years forward for where we stand. And my other concern is the percentage increase of 2.5% per year for the 3 years going forward. We don't know what is ahead of us. The state hasn't been able to pull together a budget picture because of the uncertain hole that we're facing given the economic shutdown or the duration of it and what that's going to mean for the upcoming budget or for the even more concerning the year after that and so forth. So again, my concern is I don't feel comfortable voting this when the challenges we may have ahead of us may be in terms of how do we, keep resources in the classroom and trying to hang on to as many people and services that we can, given that we could be in a situation where 1 out of 8 people in our community could be out of work. So again, it's not a reflection on the custodians, but given where we are today, not where we were 2 months ago or even the efforts that have brought the agreement to where you are today, I'm just not comfortable approving this this evening.
Great. Anybody else have any comments or questions about the contract? Donna?
Jay, how much are we talking about in terms of cost with the 2.5% increase?
For the whole, I know Paul was alluding to the extra 0.5%. The extra 0.5%. This is only 9 individuals. It has a $2,000 cost per year, more than just the straight 2. So you're talking about an extra $6,000 over the course of the 3-year term. And I think, again, not to speak for the subcommittee members, but I think that is why we just decided to put it right in the base as opposed to, having it be somewhere else in the contract. This particular group, when we were doing our negotiations, because it is a new group, this is only their second contract, they were actually not at market rate compared to some of our other comps that we had looked at. So the 2.5 was kind of a gesture to bring them closer to where other communities are at this point. So to answer your question, it's basically $2,000 per year in pennies. So it's about a $6,000 cost over the 3 years for the extra 0.5%.
So we built in that extra 0.5% into their base salary, correct? Oh, first of all, yeah, all right. So I'm sorry, there was one other question I had before that. Paul, you said on the, we've typically done 2-year contracts. That's on the municipal side, but on the school side, we've done 3-year contracts, correct?
No, all the contracts that exist today from the school department and the general government of the town expire in 2 fiscal years on June 30th, 2022. This would be out of sync. This would put you to June 30th, 2023. And therefore, my preference would be to have them all in sync. And again, this is out of sync with the others. So again, I'm not saying we don't do 3-year contracts. All I'm saying is doing a 3-year contract with this group puts them a year ahead of every other agreement we have in the town.
Okay, and then with regard to that 0.5%, what I was getting at is it is in their base salary. With the other groups that we've looked at where it's at 2%, they do have other, I lost the word. Yeah, well, or something built in already, factors, whether it be costs for, clothing, uniforms or clothing or whatever, correct?
Yeah, it's not uncommon and I'm sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No.
I was just going to say it's not uncommon in other contracts or even in previous negotiations with other groups where you might actually put, say, some extra funding on a particular step. If you were trying to add, some extra money for like longevity and you would tweak your contract step. It's a give and take in negotiations. I think in this particular agreement, what's before you is what it is on its face. It's all there in the base salary. It's 2.5% for 3 years. There's no extra kind of hidden money within this particular agreement.
Yeah. My concern, Donna, is when I still have negotiations open with the clerical union on the town side and the dispatchers, as well as the firefighters and the police sergeants. And the sergeants with the union of only 8 people, and also the non-union employees. And again, I'm only providing a 2% to our non-union employees. And again, it's where we are today. I'm not saying that the situation might not be different 2 months ago, but where we are today, again, I can't face the community and say that on April 22nd, given the unknowns and where we are in an uncertain financial future, that I think it's in the best interest to vote this deal at this time.
And Jay, correct me if I'm wrong, we're out of cycle with them because we just brought them back, a couple of years ago. So we had to start from scratch, and that's just from the other contracts.
Yeah, so we typically have always been doing 3-year contracts, and I don't think Paul has an issue with the 3-year contract. I think it's just more the cycle that it's on. So when the district had outsourced all cleaning services to Aramark, when those contracts happened to expire, I think it was the second iteration of them, and we actually brought people back to work, again, a significantly less number than we had before the outsourcing to Aramark. The 9 custodians ended up on our payroll in our system, and that first contract we negotiated with them was a 3-year contract that's term didn't end until this June 30th. So even their first contract was kind of out of sync with everyone else. And I think, if that is something that the committee desires in the long term to get everyone on a same contract cycle, certainly you can have a conversation about that before you go into negotiating. But the parameters that we negotiated under at the beginning of this term was basically a 3-year contract because that's what all the other employee groups had been offered. I just think, and again, it doesn't set up a bad context, and I think you would have the rationale to do that moving forward. It's just for this particular, if you want to get everyone on sync for this particular group, that wasn't the charge. And like all other employee groups in the schools, it was basically a 3-year contract.
All right, any other thoughts, comments, questions? Okay, if not, I believe we can take a vote, so I'll take a motion.
I make a motion to ratify the memorandum of understanding with the custodial unit.
Any seconds?
Second.
Second. Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any last comments or questions before we take a vote?
I think the only thing that's just kind of frustrating to me is that, I don't want to see this group, make it look like that they're, getting so much more than everybody else in town, when in reality, this is just, built into their base salary, and other people may have other incentives in their contract that we are not necessarily, talking about. Do you know what I'm saying? So I don't, it's 2.5%, and that's what we're going to be talking about it, but it's not that everybody else is really at 2%, because they have other incentives that are built in or other costs that are covered. So I feel like I have to say that otherwise I just think it can be misleading.
Yeah, and I'll just say our intent during the negotiation was to bring them up to the same level as other people in the same profession. So that was my viewpoint on it, and that's it.
And I get that, and I don't disagree with that, but I understand what Paul's saying is that this may not be the time, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's important to understand is that this is their salary, end of story. It's not 2%, and then other people may have 2% and other things built in, other costs covered that may bring them up to that 2%, but it just isn't recognized as part of their base salary. And, I just want to be fair about that. I don't want to have, give the people watching this meeting the impression that we're giving them a substantially higher raise than anybody else in town is getting, because that's just not the case, unless I'm misunderstanding something.
No, I think Donna's right. I think Donna's right on point. And they asked for very little. We got some of the things that we wanted. We got just about everything that we wanted. This is a group that's right up front. They're frontline service right now. I understand about not knowing fiscally where we're going to be. And, that the state and the federal are an unknown right now for our municipality. No question. I understand that you would desire to have everybody on exactly the same year for renewal. On the other hand, we might have cleaning services and nothing else in the third year, sorry. But we thought about, everything given what the level of service that they're providing. We wanted to bring them up to the same type of pay that others in their field are getting. And I stand behind this negotiation, and I think they provided an extremely important service that if we want to reopen our schools in September, they're going to be at the forefront of what needs to be done.
And ongoing, to be perfectly honest with you. I think that what we're going to be expecting from our facilities people from here on out is going to be more than we've ever expected before.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Anything else before we take a vote? Motion and a second. So Jeff?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Paul?
No.
And aye. So the vote is 5-1 to approve the contract.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Thanks, Paul.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks to John and Maria, by the way, on that negotiation. Jay, we're supposed to all sign it. Are we supposed? Do you want people to come in to do that, or?
Yeah, it's not. I mean, from my perspective, it's not overly critical at this point. This is a contract that is going to go into effect July 1st. What I will do is print off copies of the MOA to sign. If the union comes in, I'm going to leave them on my conference table. So if the union comes in for meetings, they can sign them. When you happen to be in the building to maybe sign warrants, if you want to just pop over to my office, I'll leave a pen out. Your name marker is right there, so you just sign on your name. And then when we get them all finalized, we'll send them over to the union. But no, I don't think there's a major crush where you have to rush in. Just the next time you're in for warrant signing would be fine. And I'll at least convey to the union this evening that did pass. I think the custodians have done a fantastic job during this closure. I'll relay that to them and your words of appreciation as well.
All right, moving on to the next item.
Thank you.
Moving on to number 2. So this is we've obviously had this discussion in executive session as well. And procedurally, the school committee needs to vote in open session to approve the new employment agreement with our assistant superintendent, Dr. Hirsch. So you have that before you this evening. And this also came up at 3 years ago when we were approving it might have even been mine, another non-affiliated employee contract where you do need to take the final vote in public session. So I included the wording on there for your recommended vote to approve this new agreement that was discussed in executive session, now in public session.
Any
You want the
comments or
motion?
questions?
Yes, please.
Well, I got, Dennis, do you want a motion?
Anybody have any comments before we take a motion? Questions?
No, we discussed it extensively, so I feel like we've
Okay.
covered it pretty
All
well.
right. John, then, go ahead.
Yep,
We did
I move,
discuss it. Oh, I'm sorry.
go ahead, Maria.
Can I? Okay. We discussed it extensively, and I think it's what we did. We did an exhaustive job of discussing it, which is great. I think that just generally, and I'll just say this to, it's not directly at the assistant superintendent's position. It's this particular assistant superintendent's position is over curriculum overall. And it comes under Jay's purview, and in his review, when we review them. So I'm just going to say that I think in terms of curriculum, especially as we move forward and we have all of this innovative stuff going on with online learning and all of these things, that I'm hoping as we move forward in the next couple of years to see more of an ability of parents and people who are going to be students at the high school level, folks who are the participants and recipients of the curriculum and its formation, to be more informed and more part of what happens in curriculum formation in our district. So that's one of my comments. The other one is, I think because they're not sometimes, that we're not perceived in our district as sometimes leaders in curriculum. And I think that that's actually wrong in some ways. So I'm hoping that what's happened in terms of all of the communication and all the things that have happened as we've gone through this very tough time, that will continue into continue in the curriculum area as we move forward. I think it's that important. So that's my only comment, and it's coming under this because it's what the assistant superintendent's role mainly is, and I have no problems otherwise. Okay?
All right, anybody else before we take a motion? Hey, John, I'll take a motion.
I move to approve the 3-year employment agreement covering the period from July 1st, 2020 through June 30th, 2023 with Dr. Linda Hirsch to continue to serve as Assistant Superintendent in accordance with the terms and conditions as outlined. Excuse me.
Second.
Second. Anybody else have any more comments before we vote? I want to make a comment. I want to actually commend the Assistant Superintendent. I think she does an outstanding job in curriculum, to be honest with you. I actually do this myself on a much more limited basis, and it's not an easy job. It's something that's always changing. All the new standards that come out all the time, all the new testing protocols that are out there. She's always on top of it. She always presents, a plethora of data. So much that sometimes I start to spin, but I think she does a great job. And I think between her and Superintendent Lang, it's a very good team. She's very well versed in the curriculum side of things, and he's very well versed on the financial side. And I think that's what makes our schools work the way they do. So I do appreciate the work she does, and I do think she's very good at her job.
Yeah, and if I could, I just
Yep.
agree with Dennis. I agree with Dennis completely. Just over the time that I've been in education. Curriculum's far more complicated. There are more demands. There are more things than when I had started. And as Dennis said, I've worked with other curriculum coordinators, and I worked with Linda before I retired, and I think she does a great job. And you're absolutely right, Dennis, that Jay and Linda work well together, and we're fortunate to have them.
Agreed.
Donna?
Yeah, I would like to add that in addition to the things that you mentioned, Dennis, is that we have a lot of mandates that come to the district, and that Linda has to find ways of being able to make sure that we're following those mandates, often without any funding, I might add. In addition to that, though, she also oversees other areas of the running of the school department, whether it be professional development or, running meetings and whatnot, for area districts. And it is a lot. And I think that you do an excellent job with it, Linda. I really do. And we would appreciate everything that you've done for the district, especially right now when it's just been turned on its head.
Thank you.
Hey, anything else before we vote? Okay, we'll take a vote now then. Jeff Doherty,
Aye.
John Moses,
Aye.
Maria Santos,
Aye.
Donna Newcomb,
Aye.
myself, aye, so 5-0.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Moving on, item number 3 this evening was also previously discussed in executive session, so this is bringing the vote to the floor. And it's to approve non-affiliated staff salary schedules for us in the school department. These are so we have different groups of people in the district that are either represented by unions or they're not. We have some people on individual contracts, including a lot of the central office staff and our building principals who are on individual contracts. And again, we worked quite extensively on coming up with a salary schedule and comps and looking at where our staff fell in comparison to other districts of similar size and scope. So I have 2 different recommendations for you this evening. You could either take them together, you could take them separately. I haven't broken out for you, John, on the cover memo, whatever you would prefer. Might be better to actually take them separately.
I think so.
I'll do them
Yeah.
separate.
Great.
Yeah.
Yep. So you want to take on the first one, John?
Yep. I move to approve the FY21 through FY25 salary schedule for non-affiliated central administration staff members as outlined.
Second.
Second. Great. Any questions, discussion, comments on these are the salaries for which individuals, Jay? Can you just kind of outline who's it?
Yeah, so in the central office salary ones, this would be your directors, basically. Director of Business and Finance, Information, Communication, and Technology Services, Personnel and Professional Learning, and Student Support Services.
All right. Any other questions on this particular contract?
So Jay, for these contracts, they're all 3 years?
Yeah, so the individual contracts themselves typically are 3-year contracts. The discretion to award, 1 to 3 year contracts really rests with the superintendent in this particular group. This isn't a group that comes before the school committee. What the school committee has to basically approve is the salary terms that I can then use in the contracts. So even though we're projecting out through 2025, the employment agreements themselves wouldn't exceed 3 years. So we'd only be talking 3-year contracts. We're just trying to create a kind of a roadmap for going forward. And we actually haven't had approved salary schedules like this previously. So I think this was, kind of a long time coming to be able to put together and then have a set schedule to work off in future years.
Okay, so given what we just went through with Paul Cohen here and the discussion about budgets and all these things, what's your feeling about this going forward?
I absolutely get what Town Manager Cohen was talking about, and it would be nice if people were on sync contracts, but when you have individuals enrolled in these groups and it's not a collectively bargained contract for, say, all teachers or administrators, people come and go throughout the course of the years, and you can't keep individuals in line with teacher contracts. So let's just say our teacher's contract is going to end in 2 years. If an individual in this particular group or a building principal happened to leave at the end of next year, it's not going to be attractive to offer a one-year contract to someone coming in from outside the school system to just be in line with all of the other school department union employee contracts. Contracts typically are minimally for 3 years, and that's what the expectation within the market is. So I think to do anything less than that just sends the wrong message to the people. I also think, this particular group, if we're talking about our building principals or we're talking about our central office staff that are supporting the operations in the district, this is a group that basically, I've assembled. It's our operating team at this point. I very much appreciate their work, and, it would be disingenuous of me to say that I'd want them for any less than this period of time. I think it would just send the wrong message to people also. If you had a 3-year contract and all of a sudden now you wanted to offer a 2-year contract or a 1-year contract, I think it's in the messaging that people, would be offended and would think something is potentially wrong when it isn't. So I absolutely, understand where the town manager is coming from. I just think there are different groups when you can't apply a broad brush like that.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions on this contract?
Well, the only thing I want to say about this is this is a very spirited discussion that we had. And, it's funny. I don't think any one of us could have seen what we are facing now back then when we were having this meeting. I don't think I am incorrect in saying that people like Joanna and Bill Silver and all of the people that we're talking about here have been invaluable to the running of the school system. Yet we decided to hold a very firm line, in the contract at the risk possibly of maybe losing some very talented and very skilled people. Okay, so, again, I think that this contract is very appropriate. And, like I said, I almost wish now if I had known back then what we were going to be facing now and what we'd be asking these people to do, I may have viewed things differently. But I think that, it's a good contract. It's fair. But, as I said, I think we have to acknowledge the fact that, it was with some risk, for us in terms of losing people, because the fact of the matter is these are really good people who could probably be making more someplace else.
Anybody else on this issue? I just want to add to what Donna said too, is, one of our goals was to set a framework for these contracts so that, that people are rewarded that do stay here, and that we have, if somebody does leave, we have, some place to put new people come into the district, so that, particularly with the principals, as it was before, you could have a principal leave and then a new principal come in at the higher salary, just the way it was set up. And now we kind of set more of a framework, I think, so that it's better for financial planning too, I think, the way it goes now. So
to that point, we haven't had this before, so I think it's actually very helpful in that long-range planning to just have an actual schedule to be able to fall back on, and we can revisit it going forward in the future. But at least, again, as you said, it provides that consistency and continuity for programming, and it provides that framework that we can build upon.
Okay. All right. Anybody else before we take a vote? Okay, we're going to vote then on the central administration staff. So Jeff Doherty.
Aye.
Moses.
Aye.
Maria Santos. Maria, your mic is off.
Aye.
Donna Newcomb.
Aye.
Aye, so 5-0. And so the next one, John, is the principal contracts.
Yep. I move to approve the FY21 through FY25 salary schedule for non-affiliated elementary, middle, and high school level principals as outlined. Donna, you're on mute. You're on mute.
She's trying.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Okay. Any comments or questions on this salary scale? And very similar to what we just approved for central administration.
I think it's fair, and I think it's reasonable.
I agree.
Yeah.
Okay, anybody
It is.
else? Okay, all right, we'll vote. Jeff Doherty,
Aye.
John Moses,
Aye.
Rita Santos,
Aye.
Donna Newcomb,
Aye.
and I. So 5-0 on that contract. All right, so that's the contract.
Well, thank you. No, thank you very much for doing that. And like I said, I think it's nice to kind of now have that framework to build on. So it's good to get that behind us. All right, moving into fourth item on the agenda this evening. This is just going to be a verbal update with regard to where we're at with the closure. So there obviously has been a lot of discussion over the last number of meetings and even over the last days about what was going to happen statewide with schooling. I think across the country, we've seen now double-digit numbers of states deciding that they're going to cancel in-person schooling through the end of the school year. We had received the word that the Commissioner of Ed was going to have a meeting with us on Tuesday morning at 8:30 to talk about the current state of remote learning and what was going to happen for the rest of the school year. And then likely it'd be followed up by the governor's press conference either later in the day on Tuesday or Wednesday. So we did have our conference call with the Commissioner of Ed on Monday. I think what you are seeing across the state is just varied degrees at this point of the remote learning. I actually think that we're well ahead of the curve as far as how we approached this whole process. Not to relive it because I know it's been a very difficult and challenging 5 or 6 weeks, but our first week or two was really kind of organizing ourselves, making contact and connections with students and families, making sure that everyone was well and going to be getting through this. However long it was, school closure at the time. At that point, we didn't know it was going to be through the end of the school year. And then we spent the next week and a half actually engaging our staff again, having them come into the buildings, pick up materials that they needed, providing them with some training and professional development for remote learning at the same time while they were continuing to work with their students around enrichment activities and some kind of relearning of materials that they'd already addressed during the course of the school year. And then we had a shift about a week and a half to 2 weeks ago to more student-directed learning. So the teachers began actually now talking about some new concepts. What we're in the process of doing as a district is kind of mapping out the next 8 to 10 weeks to be able to tell parents, and I think this speaks to what Donna was mentioning earlier, what should they be expecting? We as a district have talked about taking a look at our power standards at all the different grade levels, having teachers be working on putting lessons together around that, exactly what that rollout is going to look like. This is all stuff that we're working on right now. What we did learn from the commissioner's call on Tuesday morning is that because, again, the realization is set in that this is going to be statewide for the rest of the year, the state is now thinking a year from now, what are they going to do with assessments? What type of materials are going to be covered on different exams that are going to be coming out, MCAS, things like that. So the state may also be looking at identifying what they're going to consider to be their power standards or areas where they want districts to focus on at the various grade levels. So Linda and really all of her curriculum staff have been involved in meetings and discussions with the various content curriculum people from across the state to figure out what that really should look like in Chelmsford so that we're also in line with what the state's doing. And that's why I actually say I think we're a little bit ahead of the curve because we had already determined ahead of time what our focus was going to be when we shifted to kind of new learning activities. We were going to focus on those power standards. We knew exactly what we're going to focus on, and what we'll do now at this point is see if there's any tweaks that need to be made based on what comes out of DESE. The information has been coming slow, though, and I don't want us to just wait for directive. So we're going to continue doing what we're doing for the time being, and we'll make modifications as we go. As you know, I have been sending out weekly updates to parents and families. That will continue. I can also speak offline with Linda about sending out additional materials when we exactly know what those roadmaps for curriculum are going to be, whether it's by grade level or content area. We can talk a little bit about that so the parents know what to expect over the next number of weeks. But yesterday afternoon, the governor did announce, actually, what day is this, Wednesday? Yeah, they're all a blur at this point. But yesterday afternoon, the governor did announce that he is closing schools through the end of June. I didn't know originally if he was going to end up closing school through the end of May and then reassessing, because I do know that he's under some pressure to get the economy started again. But I actually think he made the wise move of just closing right through the end of the school year, which for us is mid-June. It would have actually been a little chaotic to try to figure out what a reopening of school was going to look like for just 2 or 3 weeks at the end of June. As much as we'd like to see and want to see the kids, I think there still would have been a lot of angst around parents being concerned about sending kids back to school, staff coming back to school. I actually think it would have been, more work than it's worth to try to pull off. And we would have been dealing with pretty significant, I think, absenteeism on both the student and staff front. So now at least we have some certainty and we can settle into what those, next couple of months are going to look like. I will tell you that I want to pay some special attention to the transition year students. So, we have our fourth graders who are going to be moving up to middle school. We have our eighth going to ninth, and then obviously our seniors who are graduating and going on to college or careers. Over the next week, we are really going to focus our district staff time talking about how to ensure that those transitions are as smooth as possible, particularly where people are not coming back together for any kind of real closure at the end of the school year. That is important to me. In addition to any student just not having a proper closeout of the school year, I think those transition years are going to be particularly challenging. I am going to have a call on Friday afternoon with superintendents and high school principals from the area to talk a little bit about how different school districts are going to go about handling senior activities, whether it was senior weeks and proms and graduations and whatnot. So we hope to be able to kind of share some of our ideas regionally to see if there's a particular path forward that several districts can go down together, or if we have to go out on our own and come up with our own end-of-year activities, we'll be prepared to do that as well. But we are going to try to honor in some way those end-of-year activities that I think kids have been looking forward to throughout the course of this year, and obviously their whole high school careers. There is a lot of work that's going to take place over the course of this next week. I don't have answers to everything, but I am actually happy that we at least now have some certainty and can make those decisions involve, particularly at the older grade levels, our high school students in giving some input into what those decisions are going to be. It's obviously a little more difficult getting feedback from elementary kids, but our high school students can certainly give that input, and we'll be looking for that. And then we'll be pushing and communicating that out with our families and staff as we go. What I can tell you during this closure period, and again, we're going to put together just a list of different matters that need to be addressed, almost like an FAQ type thing. And we'll start putting a response out there that we can push to our websites and our weekly newsletters. We are going to be continuing with our food program for the foreseeable future. There's no plans to change that at this point in time. We are still providing food in the afternoon hours. It's now, Joanna, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it's 4 to 5:30 out in front of the high school. It's a grab and go type concept, but we've been serving a significant number of families from the community who are in need at this point, and that's something that I want to continue with. We will talk offline internally around exactly, what our staff can support. If there are any tweaks to service hours or days and things like that, that'll be forthcoming. But I do want to be able to continue some type of a substance type program for our families in need. And again, we talked a little bit earlier this evening about our custodians, but our custodians and our food service workers have really stepped up significantly during this outage. Our custodians are helping to maintain and clean the buildings, and they're going to have us be prepared for whenever we go back. And our food service workers, again, have stepped up, and they're actually preparing and serving these meals. And, again, there are a couple of our employee groups that are physically showing up to work every day. Our other staff are certainly working a lot longer and harder hours than they probably would be if they were just reporting to school. Remote learning is a lot of work for everyone, teachers and administrators. It has not gone easy, but these two employee groups have been actually physically coming to work every day despite everything else going on around them. So I do want to thank them and give them an extra special acknowledgement as we're working this through. So again, much more to come. And to be quite honest with you, every time we get an announcement, even statewide, it brings more questions. So I really just don't know about some of the other things at this point. We do know that the governor has now closed schools through June. Daycares are going to stay closed through the end of June as well. So we know that it's going to be a challenge for families trying to get back to work, even if the restrictions are lifted around, in-face meetings and quantity of people gathering in a particular location. I don't know what that does for our summer programs. I don't know if this is going to now extend into the summer. Will this affect our special ed summer school? Would this affect our community ed Summerfest and things like this? I honestly don't know at this point. So what we're hoping to do is get some further guidance from the state this coming week. We participate on all the different calls, whether they're superintendent level, assistant, business administrator calls, sped calls, to try to get this information. And we will continue to push out what I think so far has been really kind of thorough and timely and accurate information to families. We will continue to do that over the course of the next couple of weeks. But I just don't have answers to some of the questions at this point that we're being asked. But we will find answers, and we'll craft a plan together that works for Chelmsford and helps us through this reopening process. I also don't know what school reopening in September is going to look like. I know that there are working groups that are already being put together to talk about exactly, what does a reopening look like, what type of cleaning needs to take place. Again, we talk about those transitions. How are we going to be hosting orientations for different grade levels? These are all things I know we need to address. I just don't have the answers for right now. And I don't think this is going to be on that level, just a Chelmsford specific opening. That is where we're going to be putting our groups from the Merrimack Valley together to take a look at what school reopening should look like. Again, what kind of cleaning precautions need to take place to reopen a school system of our size. It's significant. We've been closed now for a number of weeks. We've got to get our orders processed again. We've got to get into our kitchens and prepare our food services. We've got to get our buses, prepared to run. So there are a lot of logistics that are going to come into play, but they're not unique to Chelmsford. So we are going to be partnering with our other Merrimack Valley communities, try to have as an across-the-board response and consistency in messaging, and even try to help communities as we open up together, because we're all going through this at the same time. There are still a lot of questions as far as some of our contracted providers. I would love to be able to, now that we know we're out of school for the rest of the school year, I'd love to be able to get some of our contracted cleaning services into the schools earlier to be able to start their summer cleaning, their real deep cleaning that needs to take place. But before that can even happen, we're going to have to introduce our current staff and students. Are going to need to go back to the schools, pick up stuff that they may have left. Teachers are going to need time to kind of close up their classrooms. Again, these are all things that we're going to have to work on over the next couple of weeks. I don't have definitives for you right now, but I will. We're also working at the state level. The state is still recommending, that extra cleaning and summer cleaning and things like that do not occur at this point in buildings, that workers should not be coming in to just do those type of tasks. So we're also looking for the state to find out when they're going to lift some of those recommendations and regulations so that we're in compliance. But we were also taking advantage of these few extra months off to, again, get into the buildings and keep cleaning. We have workers and contractors that want to work. I want to get them back to work and as safely as we can in a timely fashion whenever we're given that green light. So there will be a lot more kind of forthcoming. I think the big takeaways are that we obviously know at this point we're not going back to school for this school year. We will be figuring out exactly what the end of year closing will look like. And we will be paying special attention to the fact that staff and students don't have a true closure to the school year, and that, we're going to need to support each other through these next couple of months as we get back to whatever our new normal is going to be.
All right. Before we open up to members, Sinead, you stayed on. Do you have any questions for the superintendent or assistant superintendent before?
Nope.
I think I'm good.
Okay, great. All right, so Donna, you have a question?
I did want to address Sudeep and Katrina. Katrina, you're a junior this year, correct?
No, I'm a sophomore.
Sophomore, okay, sorry. Sudeep, you're a senior.
I'm a junior.
Well,
Open to.
Okay, great, good job though.
Thank you. All right. In any case, I do think it's important, and I want to speak directly to you because I don't want you to think that that the school committee or any members of the community are indifferent or insensitive to the fact that the seniors at the high school are going through a major transition, at the end of this school year. Unfortunately, we're in this position and our directors are coming from the Department of Education and from the governor. And I think that if it was anything within our power to change this, we would. But, safety is obviously most important. But, I think that it's important that we recognize that there is a certain amount of sadness, and frustration with the fact that things just can't be different at this point. But I want to assure you, as I said, that we're not indifferent or insensitive to the feelings of students. One thing, Dr. Lang, I was wondering is Mr. Murray, I know that he's had a chance to probably talk to the class officers, and I was wondering if he's having ongoing meetings with them to kind of get input as to how it is that things might kind of roll out towards the end of the school year.
Yeah, it's my understanding that he has at least regular conversations with the class officers. Maybe Sudeep could speak to that.
Yeah, so I am a class officer myself, and I've had meetings with him, so it was with the deans as well.
And then I just had a couple other quick questions. Do we know, are we all set on, I'm sorry about the dog. Are we all set about technology? Is everybody have access to technology at this point that we think that needs it in the district?
Are you asking me?
I don't know. Just
Okay.
anybody. I'm sorry. Excuse me. 1 second.
I always recommend muting your mic before you yell at the dog. It doesn't work well.
The dog's fine. Don't worry about it.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, what we ended up doing, Donna, just to that point, we obviously wanted to be able to put technology in the hands of students that didn't have it. So when our staff were originally reaching out to families to check on them, to re-engage them in schools, they were asking, do you have devices in the home? Are you able to connect to the internet to be able to do remote learning? And originally we had a number of students that didn't. So we were able to break down some of our Chromebook carts that we had in other buildings, set up times, safe times for kids to be able to come by with their families, pick up a device, and go home. We had the kind of first wave of responses. I thought it actually went very well. We then have the stragglers that have either come along after the fact, realize that, maybe now they don't quite have the technology that they need. So schools have been continuing to give out some devices to students. I really think we're actually at a pretty good point at this point, though. I don't know that we're going to need to really break down any more carts that we have. We don't have a backlog of people asking for devices. We do have some families that, people would love a device for every single member of their family.
Right.
We haven't done that. We've provided at least devices for kids in each family to be able to get online. There are some scheduling issues and things along those lines. But I think we're actually in a good place. And as our staff continue to talk to families, if needs arise, they're very good about reaching out to us.
Now, I know we have the pride expectations around Google Classroom and then the Zoom meetings or the meetings that are scheduled in Google Suite. But do we have a remote learning plan for each level that is available for parents to be able to see in terms of what would be expected, how many hours a day kids should be, putting into schoolwork, those kinds of things?
That was in the expectations document that we had sent out a week or two ago.
I couldn't find it for some reason. I don't know why, but yeah.
Yeah, I can re-forward it. And I mean,
Right.
I think the other thing too is even as I'll work with Linda, but obviously our content is going to change a little bit now. I think our messaging can also be a little more certain about, we know how many weeks this is going to go for. We can work on refreshing that to parents just so that they know. I will tell you, as much information as we push out at central office, principals are really doing an outstanding job of staying in touch with their parent community. They really know what kind of communications hit home best. They are kind of on the front lines again of kind of setting those expectations, following up with parents if they're having issues with communication or, too much, too little contact with staff. So I can also take a look at the messaging that they're putting out, but I think they're really kind of hitting it by grade level. When we send something out from the district, they're like general parameters. We talked about basically the expectation of a half a school day. So about 3 to 4 hours of work. But then at the individual levels, the elementary, would send their own messaging home, middle and high school. But we can obviously refine that in the coming weeks because now we know how long we're out for.
Right, and then just the last thing is with regards to the kids at the high school level, and I'm sure this is probably already happening, but I just want to double check. And a lot of them are working. They're working at the various grocery stores and other places, or they may be helping out with younger siblings because parents are working at home. So do they have like would it be better for them, I guess, to know what they have to do at the beginning of the week and when their Zoom classes are scheduled so they can schedule around that and work with their parents, to be able to help out at home and stuff like that? Or because, as the kids said, as Deep and Katrina said, sometimes it's day to day, sometimes it's, assignments are posted on Monday, they're due on Friday. Would it be better if it was consistent, from teacher to teacher?
Let me say one quick thing, and then I'll turn it over to Linda. I mean,
Sure.
I think there is something to be said for consistency. What I had read into Sadeep's comments, and he can jump back in again if I'm wrong, but I think some teachers were giving out information, say, on a Monday, and
Right.
they had the whole week to complete them, but then other teachers might have assignments that are due periodically throughout the course of the week. I don't think we're ever going to get to the point where we dictate to teachers that you have to give this out on a Monday and you can't ask for something for the week. In all honesty, I've been pushing, and I've only received a handful, but any kind of concerns like that, I've been really pushing students and parents to just reach out and directly speak with the staff, because sometimes the staff don't realize that there's a scheduling issue or, that they've assigned items at the same time a different teacher had, because our staff even have less contact with each other now in this new environment as well. So I could normally be your next door partner and I would know you have a big assignment due this week, and maybe I wouldn't assign something because I knew you were doing something, but they don't even have that, just the daily interactions with each other. So I've just been pushing for the kids to really, and at the elementary level, the parents, if they have a concern, just reach directly out to that teacher, let them know what's working, what's not working. And again, I've seen, and Linda can maybe talk to this, even some of the stuff in Google Classrooms that are changing, because now we've been doing this for a couple of weeks, and we know that there's a different kind of consistency and continuity that needs to take place. So I think that's even going to be further and further refined and continue to improve during this duration. One last thing before Linda speaks. At the end of this whole process, and I think hopefully over the summer, we're going to be able to step back when we're not just dealing with the day-to-day triaging of this, and actually put some focus groups together by level and talk about what really went well, what didn't work well. What if we do have to deal with this in another year? How quickly do we move into remote learning? Because now we've done this. So when we're not all kind of in the heat of actually delivering the instruction right now remotely, we will put together leveled working groups district-wide and really come up with some best practices and almost a roadmap for the next time. God forbid we ever had to do something like this, so that we know exactly what worked well and how we're going to approach it.
Okay, thank you.
Linda, if you want to jump in.
Linda?
I won't be labelist. What I wanted to say earlier, it's not lost on us that some people are struggling with the process, right? We've heard from parents, we've heard from students.
Sure.
And I think and as you know, this is a teacher, you're trying to put something together, you're trying to put something really good together. It looks awesome. You've talked to your colleagues, you Googled everything under the sun, giving yourself PD. And then unfortunately, then you launch it and maybe it is too much, maybe it's too little. And we just have to be, mindful of that this is all new to our teachers. So in conjunction with trying to maybe learn new technologies, they are also trying to see what does a half a day look like. To speak for our high schoolers, you have to remember they're on a waterfall drop to schedule, right? So it's really sometimes hard to say, okay, this is due on Monday, and I'm going to give this to you on Monday, and then it's due on Friday, because technically they probably would only see that teacher maybe 3, possibly 4 times in a week, depending on what block it is, right? We could always talk to teachers about, why don't you run it by the blocks if we're finding that it's too much for the students? How many times a week would you have seen your B block English class or your, C block math class? And I think what Dr. Lang was saying is it's sometimes hard to put that parameter on, because different content areas require different levels of support, right? So some of those courses, those teachers do need to be there like every other day, every day. So maybe that's how they're breaking it down for the students, especially like our AP students have to, complete whatever material they had because they're taking those exams.
Right.
And then music's a little different because they're doing more performance-based things. So like I said, it's not lost on us. I think people have struggled. They've reached out. We're not trying to, ignore them. But the one thing we have to do is kind of follow the order, because even though I'm in some of the classrooms, I'm not in all of them. I'm not the holder of all the information. So typically we're like, please, see your teacher. And we get it. If you're not understanding stuff, you see your building principal. And if it's really, really struggling, yeah, absolutely. No, either one of us have no problem going in and having a conversation, but we're not the holders of all the information on the students and what's exactly happening in every single Google Classroom. So we need to be able to go to the administrators that do have the view of every teacher, either in their building or in their department, because that's what we did ask for at the beginning, and the teachers were fine with it. They think it's great. They're helping each other. They're supporting each other. But we did ask for consistency. So if you are posting every Monday, post every Monday, right? If you're the Monday through Friday person, if you're having your Google Meets, on these days, have the Google Meets. Don't just throw it on somebody the midnight the night before because they're in bed, right? So just try to keep whatever that rhythm is. Keep that consistency. And if it's not working, shift it, but then be consistent with the new shift. So we have no problem working with that. The teachers are struggling with it too. So I just want to be mindful of all the working parts that are happening. We're going to do the best we can and, work with every student we have to the best of our ability.
So Katrina and Sudeep, I will say as a teacher, I've never worked harder in my life teaching. And it's, right. And as a teacher, I also feel like I'm working in the dark. So, usually when you guys would walk through the door, you can kind of take the temperature, how are the kids feeling today? What's the level of motivation and engagement? And now I have no idea what's going on the other end. So I think at the end of this, the feedback from you both and from the student body will be very, very important in terms of guiding us as we move forward in the future.
Are we going to make the comment that she is in the dark because she's in the dark?
Yeah, no, I was kind of like, your lighting isn't the greatest, Tana.
I know, I don't know.
Literally, figuratively, I mean,
this Zoom stuff, I'm done. Yeah, it's horrible.
Maria, you got a question or a comment?
I have several. Okay, so some of the letters that came in, do you want to mention some of the things, John, or should I just go ahead? Okay, so one of the people was asking us about what's going to happen in terms of things like how their 6th grader is now going into 7th grade. How do they select the language? When will they be advised of what they're going to select in terms of chorus or band or performance, those type of things. So I think these questions go more towards what usually happens during the year as they transition into a different grade level and so on. How are you going to be dealing with those things? I don't know at the middle school level if the guidance counselors are going to reach out what it is, but I'm sure you're planning for it. So that's one of the questions. The other questions were things like when you transition over from 8th grade into 9th grade, you get to fill out a little survey about mentors and how to select your mentor. And that to 9th graders is a very important thing, the whole mentoring program. How will the high school deal with that? How will they make sure that people are well paired up and so on? So those are big questions. I think one of the things these letters pointed out to me, and Donna has said, get input from students and so on. I think it's also important to get the input, especially at the elementary and the middle school level from parents on how this is working out and how this is transitioning. And in addition to that, on some of these activities that are in the transitional years, PTOs have a lot to do with those, like the fourth grade, big celebrations and activities as people move up. The eighth grade, they participate in those activities. The prom, all of those things with the high school PTO. I think it would be important to get parental involvement in how some of this is going to be communicated out. And people have ideas, which might help too, or might not, but there are ideas out there and people want to share those as well. Okay, so just putting so those are some of the things that we're getting, questioned on from parents.
One of my recommendations, one of my recommendations would actually, and I was going to bring up a new business, but I'll throw it out there now is that we haven't, we don't have PTO meetings or things like that, and I wonder if it would be worth scheduling, at the school level in each school, some type of parent forum, just to be able to, for the parents to be able to maybe get questions answered from the principals and vice principals, and maybe a school psychologist about how to handle kids' anxiety, around this remote learning process and, all of those kinds of things, because I do feel like right now there's a lot of parents out there who are, like teachers, just kind of operating on an island and trying to figure out how to make this all work. And we're not necessarily providing the type of support that we would normally be able to provide. I wonder if there's something that we could do about that.
Can I just interject for just a second? Because the guidance department has put together a process like that for the students to access, and we can get that information. I would put it in this week's newsletter as well, and I believe it's been in the principals' newsletters to help with those anxiety pieces, because that has been the focus beyond working with families that are struggling or trying to keep kids engaged that are not necessarily engaged in school.
Right. Okay. I'm just going to ask one more question that was in this letter. Will the school department still go forward with a standards-based report card where the meeting was canceled for parents to hear information and voice their questions or concerns? What will it now be put on hold, or what's the plan for that going forward?
Do you want me to answer
That was
that?
one of the questions.
I'm happy to. I mean, there's no plan on not moving forward with that at this point in time. I do think we had posted for a parent night. I honestly don't recall, because it was going to be during the night of a school committee meeting, if we had it or if that happened before the closure. So if we need to reschedule a night, I mean, we could probably put together like our own presentation that we could then just share a link to. And we could hold, some kind of a online, meeting to maybe talk about it a little bit or whatnot. But I don't think we necessarily as a district, and this isn't just on that issue, but on any issue, if we have projects that are earmarked for next year, I don't think we should back off them just because of the school closure, or we're going to lose momentum on other things that we were trying to get done staging wise. So if that was missed, and again, everything is a little bit of a blur to me right now as far as when dates were going to be and when we're meeting, we can certainly get that on the agenda and talk about how we want to move forward with that. To Donna's point about PTOs, if they wanted to host some kind of a joint meeting with the schools, I'm sure the schools are open to that. I honestly just don't know what communications or conversations have already happened between, say, the PTO groups and the principals, but I can put that on my weekly check-in with the principals to see what they're getting for feedback. And I do think, Maria, on your point, as far as the enrollment in classes and, selection of orientation mentors and things like that, now that there is some finality to the school closure, we can kind of move forward with all of those. So those are all things I don't quite have answers to right now, but they absolutely have been talked about. They're on our radar, and we can work over the next week or two to have a district-wide response and communication sharing with parents about those.
Okay, so the only other one I received a lot on is, returning to school and the costs that are going to be involved with returning to school, which could quite really be very different from what we have budgeted for, and what our plan is, because as Mr. Cohen pointed out, we negotiated something and dealt with something before this all hit us. And you could have a lot more cleaning costs. You could have a lot more operational costs because you're limited to having only a certain number of students each day in the building. So you may have to run it for longer hours, or you may have double bus runs, many things that could happen going into the future. We don't know what those guidelines are. Is it possible that we may have to revisit this budget and think about what we need to put in there before we even get to town meeting?
I mean, again, to that one, I can consistently tell you tonight, I don't know. I guess that's my answer to most of these questions. I don't know what the next couple of weeks or months are going to bring. I think that's why it's important for not only us, but for us to get into those working groups with the other Merrimack Valley districts and get guidance from the state with regard to what exactly is going to be required to open school. What is going to happen as far as required cleanliness? Is there going to be one big clean? Is there going to be other continual cleans that are going to have to take place? I just don't know yet, Maria, but that is on the list of things. I think when it comes to budgeting, I feel like we're in good shape now for our traditional, deep cleaning that takes place during the summer. Our contractors at night really do a very good job of cleaning our buildings. I'm confident that, they can continue. We can supplement with our daytime cleaners as well. Could there be additional costs? There may be, but I really just don't know. The budget document itself, we can revisit it at any time. Even though we vote to approve it and we approve the line items, technically we're getting approval from town meeting on the overall budget, the $63 million. And then within that $63 million, the school committee can revisit and reallocate funding within the lines as you see fit all the way through the course of the school year. Obviously, that's our roadmap that we use our programming and our staffing models and whatnot, but we can and we will have to make little improvisions throughout the course used to, plan gets thrown at us.
See, I'm picturing Donna with that thermometer every morning in front of her students, and I'm picturing Dennis doing the same thing, and those cost money. It's those type of things that are very possibly coming our way. So let's see.
But I think just for my own sake, I don't disagree with you, but there's just so many unknowns right now that I just don't have answers to. On a positive note, we're at least looking at not having to, open schools for 4 months. So that is going to give us the necessary time to plan and to put a plan together, a communication strategy to be able to talk to our staff and parents and students about. So I'm confident we'll be there in not too long order. It's just going to take us a little bit of time.
Yep. And my final thing on this is I personally, and I'm sure every single one of us feels the same way, safety is the most important thing as people transition in. So, people are sending these comments and so on, which are important for things for us to consider. But I'm sure I want people to realize that I do consider the safety to be key.
Yeah, I mean, to that, I agree with you. I don't think there's a member of this committee or administration that doesn't feel like safety was our top priority. Even before the governor ended up closing, schools for the state, we had made that decision on our own that we were basically going to close for a couple of weeks, step back, and actually be able to assess the situation and see, are our staff safe going to work? Are our students safe being in proximity? Some of the messages we were getting statewide were a little conflicting. So we're absolutely 100% into this for safety first. And I think there's not a member of the school committee or administration that would do otherwise.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Maria. I think you covered everything that from the information that we received.
All right. Anybody else have any comments, John?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I don't first. I'm not muted. Okay. So first of all, I want to say that the teachers are really doing an outstanding job in an unprecedented kind of scenario. One thing I just want to hope that you guys keep into account, just take into account when, if this ever happens again, is that I've talked to a lot of parents with very different situations, and you have no control over the classroom, right? So a classroom is a control environment. I talked to some parents that have one kindergartner and they're having the time of their life. I've talked to other people that have 4 kids in different grade levels, and that experience on the receiving end is completely different between different types of people. I talked to somebody that is a registered nurse, and she has 2 kids one in middle school and one in elementary school, and she has to try to teach her kids from 6 feet away. So just maybe some thought and consideration of what is credit versus no credit, maybe pertaining around the specials. But just the controlled environment of a classroom doesn't exist in a house, and the kind of the lay of the land for all of these different parents is incredibly different. High school kids have different challenges than middle school kids, than do elementary kids, and sometimes you have all 3 of these mixed into a single household. So no question, just more of a comment. I hope you guys will take that into account for future planning for, God forbid, there's ever another event like this.
All right. Anybody else? Any other comments or questions?
I think going forward, another thing we need to think about is the fact that this may become a more permanent part of our lives and our contracts, and what teachers have to do and what staff needs to do. So just as we go forward, thinking about that. I mean, I'm hearing some reports that in September and October, we may be even in a worse situation. So we may not, they don't know. So it could be that, this is where we are going to be in September on online learning again. And if it is, then, is what happens with our contracts? What happens with the requirements and everything for students? So there's a lot to think about, and the fallout of this is pretty big too. So just, I'm sure it's overwhelming for you all a bit sometimes. I think you've done a tremendous job with getting us to this point. I have full trust that you're going to get us forward and keeping us moving forward. And I know you'll get the input and you'll do what you need to do. But I really, really think that this is major change in both for students, for parents, for teachers, for administrators, for everybody in the system and the community too. I want to make an additional comment, and it's this one. It is so important what you've decided to do as a school district that we've decided to do in serving the meals to people and in providing the food on Fridays to various folks. So I really want to commend everybody who's agreed to do that and to thank them. Okay, it makes us look great and it serves a lot of great people.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, all right, well, I'll move on to the next agenda item then, which is the warrant signing policy.
Correct. Yeah, this is you had mentioned this to me. Mass Association of School Committees had just put out some different reminders about options that the committees could avail them to, particularly during these challenging times. And one of them was Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 56, which would allow either temporarily or permanently for the school committee to just through its chair appoint one member to be the required number of signatories on warrants, just so that 3 people don't have to come into the office to sign things. So I just, Dennis had asked, I just prepared that memo for you with a little bit of the verbiage from MASC, and didn't know if the committee wanted to entertain discussing that as either a temporary during this closure to a set date or permanently going forward, totally at your purview, but that legislation does exist.
Yeah, just to add, just happened to be coincidence. We got an email that said the warrant was due, and I went and signed it, and as I wandered around the building with my mask and gloves on, I got back home and I saw the email from MASC, and it might not be a bad idea to limit the number of people that have to go into the building to sign the warrant, the number of people have to handle the warrant. I mean, as I'm sure we all do, we go through every single page and we look at everything, and so 3 different sets of hands plus Joanna and whoever else in her office and in those papers. So if we could limit the number of people that did that, that would probably be, just a good protocol, or at least for now. I mean, this is something, if we choose to do it now, we can revisit when life gets back to normal and go back to having multiple signers. But I just thought it'd be maybe a better safe than sorry type of measure. So I don't know what other people think of that, but open for discussion.
Yeah, Dennis, I agree. I think it's for during this time, we have one person and then revisit it, to get back to 3 when things get back to normal.
Yeah, I think the world right now is about mitigating risk, and the fewer people we have in front of other people, the better.
I agree. I do want to set some firm timelines, though, to revisit this. As we go forward, we may choose to extend it, but I don't want to let it run out too long, because you're right, it's a lot of hands, but it's also, a lot of eyes. And so I think that's important. Not that we doubt your work, Joanna, that's not what I'm saying, but I think it does help us to be, it certainly helps me, as I'm looking at things and, kind of understanding how, money is being spent and things like that. And I think it's a great opportunity to be able to ask questions and get information. So I don't want to let it run out too long.
Yeah, if I can just
agree with
one
what
second. You're not restricting who can access the warrant. I just want to make that clear.
Yeah.
The warrant would still be in the business office to sign. What you're basically doing is, for procedural purposes, only requiring one vote, so that, if people couldn't get in, you're not holding up a warrant from being paid.
Right.
But technically, even if you weren't the appointed assigner, it's still within your purview. If you wanted to come in and look at something, no one is saying that you can't.
No, I agree. I think, though, that John and Jeff raised good points. I think safety is the most important thing right now.
Marie, you had any comment there?
I agree with what Donna said.
Okay. Yeah, no, and again, I don't know if we can set a firm timeline for when everything's going to be back to normal, but I agree. Once we seem to be out of the woods, we could definitely come back and revisit whether we want to have the multiple signers or not. But for now, I think this would be a good way to do it. And if you read the what came through MAC, we're all still responsible for what's in that warrant. So even though there's one signer, ultimately, hopefully that person does a good job, because we're all ultimately still responsible. So,
Right.
I will entertain a motion then, if everybody's okay with that.
All right. I move that the committee adopt provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 56, and further authorize the chair to appoint a signatory for warrants.
Second.
Okay. Any further comments or questions on this?
Do we want to pick a date that we're going to revisit this? Like June 30th or something
Yeah, June 30th,
Of next year,
of 2020?
2020.
2020?
Yeah.
Why don't you do it on an actual meeting date, though? Jay, when's the meeting date in June?
We don't have to go that way. We could just say on the last meeting before June 30th, 2020.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents here.
Yeah.
Good.
I was going to say, I don't necessarily need to make it as part of the motion. I'm just suggesting that around that time we just check in.
I think it's important to make it part of the motion. And I think the things that you said were correct. It's very important that more than one set of eyes in the school committee itself be looking at this. It's important to all of us. So, this is a particularly thing.
Yeah, I think we all agree with that. It's just I think we all agree that the best way to do it is to have 3 sets of eyes. But as John said, we're just trying to, limit the risk. And I think once things get back to normal, I would move that we went back to 3 signatures. But
Right, but again, I don't know if the end of June is going to be back to normal again. I mean, we could put it as an agenda item to check in.
That's what I think we should do.
I think being optimistic at the end of June. I think we're hopefully by the beginning of fall we're back to normal. But yeah, I mean, if we approve this, we can check in.
Yep.
Sometime at June meetings and just see how it's going, and then revisit.
Right.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. So we'll vote. Jeff.
aye.
John.
Aye.
Maria.
Aye.
Donna.
Aye.
Myself, aye. Okay, so it passes 5-0. If anybody, it really wants to be the single signatory, let me know, contact me. I don't mind doing it. I have to go into the office anyways to sign things with the superintendent. I've been in a couple times with the MSBA application and the MOU with the union and all that. So I'm already in there, so I don't mind doing it, and I'm a mile away. But if anybody feels very strong that they would like to have that responsibility, by all means, get in touch with me, discuss it at that point. All right.
Well, you're
Thanks. All right, so moving on to the next item, student opportunity.
Yes, so before you this evening is our recommended Student Opportunity Act submission. As you recall, when the legislature passed the legislation talking about the new funding coming under the Student Opportunity Act, one of the requirements is that each district actually submit a plan to the Department of Education that is reviewed and approved for the expenditure of the funds. Now, districts across the state are receiving varying degrees of funding under the Student Opportunity Act. Chelmsford is basically receiving the minimum. We're only receiving the $30 per student additional allocation. So whether the Student Opportunity Act were there or not, I really don't think that our financial revenue from Chapter 70 was going to be affected. There were a lot of districts that are receiving millions more. So there was a threshold established, I believe, at $2 million, so that if you were receiving more than that in Chapter 70 next year, you actually had to fill out the long form. And we were a district, obviously, that was well below that, so we only have to fill out the short form or a short plan. But what we basically have to do is detail for the Department of Education, what we'll be doing with our funding or new funding for next year. So I thank Linda for actually pulling this together. But we basically crosswalked our budget book to talk about the different initiatives that we had included in the budget that had been reviewed and approved by the school committee to show the state what we're actually going to be spending the money on. Now, you'll notice that we're only receiving about $150,000 worth of new money from Chapter 70, but before you is kind of our whole plan. We didn't want to cherry pick the plan and actually show only certain things that we're working on, because this is a kind of a comprehensive budget and a comprehensive plan for the district. So the different elements of this plan actually add up to about $1.7 million. So, all technically, I guess we had to show, was how we were going to spend that 150. I think it's more important in larger districts that were receiving like millions of dollars. They want to really know how those millions are being spent. Because again, we're a short form district. I don't see this being overly scrutinized by the state, again, because we're getting minimum aid. But as I actually was speaking with Donna earlier today, what I think is important to show the community is that as a district, we really have identified and need to be spending about $1.7 million ballpark on new initiatives to support learning within the district. Yet only $150,000 of that is coming from the state. The rest is basically coming from the town supporting us in educational initiatives through the regular town operating budget. So I think that's important to point out that we actually, our needs far surpass what we're getting in Chapter 70 from the state. But what you have before you today is our draft SOA plan to be submitted. And ultimately, we're happy to answer any questions. But we're looking for your approval tonight to approve that document for us to then in turn submit it to DESE for review.
Okay, any questions before we?
Yeah, I mean, that was pretty eye-opening to get this report, and I do think that it's important to share with the community, but I also think it's really important to share this with our reps and Senator Barrett, because basically, we're getting $150,000, and what we're putting in place for programming for these areas that have been identified by the state is costing us $1,651,299 to be exact. So, I think that they need to understand that, once again, Chelmsford has been, kind of left behind in terms of the funding, and that's just not going to stop us or prohibit us from doing the right thing for our kids, but it comes at a cost. And I think this report spells it out beautifully, and I think that we should send a letter to them with this report included.
All right, any other comments or questions on this? Take a motion?
I recommend the school committee vote, I make a motion to approve the SOA plan as presented and authorize the superintendent to submit the SOA plan to Mass DESI for review and approval.
Second.
Second. Okay, any last questions, comments? Okay, Jeff,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
Donna,
Aye.
and I. Okay. All right, thank you very much. Okay. Thank you.
We're really flying now. All right.
Yeah.
Item number 7 on the agenda tonight. This is the annual vote to authorize me to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority a statement of interest for Chelmsford High School. We've talked about this previously. We've submitted the last couple of years, and obviously everything is very unknown at the state level. A lot of the MSBA's funding capacity comes from tax rates and things like that, so we don't know what is going to happen statewide with the MSBA or available funding for next year. But it is important for us to maintain our application in the pipeline to let them know of our continued interest in moving forward with a school project at some point in the future. So I've made some revisions to the statement of interest that was previously submitted. It's before you this evening. Again, it's for the Chelmsford High School project, and I would recommend, and I know, John, this is a long vote that does have to be read into the record, but I would recommend that you vote to approve this. After you approve it, it would then go on to the Board of Selectmen for them to approve, and I would get it submitted by the May 6th deadline.
All right, John, you want to get this out of the way and then we'll discuss?
Yeah, let's do that. All right. Having convened in an open meeting on Wednesday, April 22nd, 2020, prior to the closing date, the school committee of Chelmsford, in accordance with its charter, bylaws, and ordinances, has voted to authorize the superintendent to submit to the Massachusetts School Building Authority the statement of interest form dated April 21st, 2020, for Chelmsford High School located at 200 Richardson Road, which describes and explains the following deficiencies and priority categories for which an application may be submitted to the Massachusetts School Building Authority in the future, including the elimination of existing severe overcrowding, prevention of severe overcrowding expected to result from increased enrollments, replacement, renovation, or modernization of school facility systems, such as roofs, windows, boilers, heating, and ventilation systems, to increase energy conservation and decrease energy-related costs in a school facility, and replacement of or addition to obsolete buildings in order to provide for a full range of programs consistent with state and approved local requirements. And hereby further specifically acknowledges that by submitting the statement of interest form, the Massachusetts School Building Authority in no way guarantees the acceptance or approval of an application, the awarding of a grant, or any other funding commitment from the Massachusetts School Building Authority, or commits the city, town, regional school district to filing an application for funding with the Massachusetts School Building Authority.
That's excellent.
Wasn't bad.
Yeah, oh, my turn, right? Second.
Yeah, second. Nice job, Donna, with the second. That was right.
Killed it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Any questions or comments on this?
The only thing I can think of, Jay, is, I mean, I'm all for, going forward with this. I think we have to. But I wouldn't be surprised if, we meet some opposition, down the road, because I think people are going to be concerned about, finances, and, it would be just our luck to get approved, in the next couple of years, when things couldn't be worse financially. So,
I am concerned about that. I think for practical purposes, I think we need to submit the application. I think we need to continue through the process to, at some point in the future, be able to, hopefully build a new school project. I'm not naive to the fact that, just given the timing and everything, that this could be problematic if we ever were approved. But I actually think the state is not going to have a significant amount of money to put toward this initiative for the next year or two. So I think it's important for us to remain in that pipeline And then hopefully when we come out of this on the other side, we might be ready to then at that point move forward with the project. I think if we ever didn't continue along this line, it just sets us back for the years that we've already applied.
I agree.
I mean, the facts that you present here are, it's a little worrisome that we're going to have this much crowding in the elementary levels. So, yep, gotta keep moving.
All right, any other questions or comments? Now, you mentioned you did some tweaks. What kind of tweaks do you have to do to something like this?
Just very minor changes, Dennis, but when I went through the document, obviously, everything is a year older. So all of the reports that we'd referenced through the document that said, you know, an HVAC system was tweaked to something 11 years ago, obviously now it's 12. You know, some of the narratives that just talk about some of the program elements that we have, I just updated if I knew that there were different programmatic elements. You have to include current year and prior year financial information. So obviously I had to include fiscal 21 budget information is next, and, you know, fiscal 20 is current. So again, no substantive changes to the document, just a lot of, you know, kind of editing to make sure that it was appropriate for the year that we were submitting.
All right. John, you want to make that motion again?
No,
All right. All right, we'll vote then.
it's already in the complete pile over there.
All right, so we'll vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Aye. Donna?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
And aye, so 5-0.
Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda this evening is item number 8, and this is our school committee annual vote on participation in the school choice program. So you have a memo in front of you with some information that basically graduates up all of our existing school choice students by a grade level. So anyone who's a senior at the high school obviously is moving on to college or career, so they're not included in the report. And I've updated our numbers for K-12, and next year we actually have 35 students who are already enrolled in the Chelmsford Public Schools who continue to be our students through school choice. So this gives us an opportunity to offer some additional spots within town. The way the school choice program works is any student from any Massachusetts resident is able to apply to the school system for the spots that we specify. We obviously have been specifying spots at the secondary level of the district because we do have higher enrollments at the elementary school level. We don't have significant need at this point for any additional elementary school students, but we do have some room at the secondary level. So that's what we've been recommending to be increased. Within this report as well, where we have 35 students for our budget planning purposes, we always budget for 50. We receive about $5,000 per student who enrolls in Chelmsford under the school choice program. So in our budget documents, we've basically accounted for $250,000 coming in through school choice, and we've earmarked those funds to support our one-on-one initiative with computers so that that initiative is actually paid for and sustained through the school choice revolving fund revenue, and it doesn't hit the local operating budget as an actual cost. And I think that's going to be helpful to us in the outlier years going forward. So to be able to maintain the 50 students, we need to basically open up 15 additional spots. Now, whether we get 15 students that are interested or we get, 30 students that are interested, we won't know until the process concludes. If you open up 15 spots and we get 15 students, then they come into the district. If we end up getting 20 students and we only offered 15 spots, then we're in a lottery situation where we basically, it's a blind lottery. We would just pull names from a hat to meet our criteria for grade levels. But I think the 15 is probably, reasonable. And again, I wouldn't be surprised given the economy a little bit if we may have some additional interest, particularly at the secondary level, with some students who might look at this as an option as opposed to a private school where, you have to pay a tuition and, things are a little unsettled even with the start of the school year. So I think this before you would be a good plan for us. It'd be consistent with our prior recommendation, prior budgeting, and again, would allow us to take in funds to support our one-on-one initiative, which really benefits all students currently in the 5th and 9th grade. But next year it'll be, half of our 5th through 12th grade students will end up having a device as we close that gap to, in just 3 years' time, have 100% of our students have that device.
Okay, any questions before?
Outcome.
Donna.
Yeah, that's it. What is the outcome for these students? Do we retain these kids for all 4 years typically?
Yeah, so whenever you accept as a district a school choice student into your district, they become one of your own.
Right.
And so they're only voted in once. So if you bring in, say, a 6th grade student, then that first year that they're in the district, they're obviously yours. They're counted in your head count. And they progress like a regular Chelmsford student right through high school. They don't get annually voted on each year. They're one of your students.
But do we find that the kids who opt into the school choice program stay for their 4 years, or do they go back to their district?
Oh, no. Yeah, it's a very stable group.
Okay.
Typically, when students do come through school choice, they stay with us for the duration. We have had some students that physically move from the area, but that happens with even our own students. If your family up and moves to California, obviously you have to go with them. But no, it's a very stable group.
Great, thank you.
Any specific reason for the specific numbers, like at Parker, McCarthy, in 10th grade?
Yeah, and then the Deep had a question too after, just to go back to him.
Okay.
But no, one of the reasons we're largely taking the vast majority of the students in at the secondary level, at the high school level as freshmen. It's nice when they come in that way. We do have staff that from year to year will express that they would like their child to be able to attend school and come into the district with them. So that's why, we have had staff members who have asked if we opened up a school choice spot in that particular grade, they would be interested in having their child come to school with them.
Okay.
So we kind of do that as a benefit to staff.
Okay. Steve, did you have a question?
Wasn't a question, but me and Katrina gotta go, so I was just gonna say thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
I'm glad to see you guys.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Good to see
Good
you
to see ya.
too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
All right,
I
so
thought it
we'll,
was school choice.
all right. Any other questions? Okay, we'll take a motion. Can you hear him?
No.
No,
No, John, we can't hear you for some reason.
Take two. I make a motion to accept 15 additional new students, 2 at McCarthy Parker Middle School in grade 5, 12 at Chelmsford High School in grade 9, and 1 at Chelmsford High School in grade 10 under the Commonwealth of Massachusetts School Choice Program, bringing the total school choice participation in the Chelmsford Public Schools to 50 enrolled students during the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Second. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, we'll vote. Jeff,
aye.
John,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
Anna,
Aye.
myself, aye, 5-0. Okay,
All right. I just have to say, John's motions have been fantastic tonight.
Incredible.
Prepped all day.
Nice job, Jay.
I love it. All righty. Next item on the agenda this evening is item number 9. This is through the budget process. We actually had included a recommendation and funding to increase our day-to-day substitute teacher rate from the current rate of $75 a day to $90 a day. Cheryl Kirkpatrick in our personnel office had done a report that was included in the budget book. So I reattached that to this, and just with her cover memo, basically making that change. As we were going back and reviewing our budget notes, we didn't actually take a formal vote during the budget hearing to make that change. So that's why it's before you this evening. The HR office is going to start putting their publicity together for the fall recruitment of day-to-day subs, and we just wanted to have that rate approved so that we can include that in the literature. So that would be the recommendation before you this evening.
okay, any questions? All right,
I think that it may look like it's costing us money, but this is potentially something that would benefit our own community members, because we know that during difficult economic times, our subpools tend to increase because people are looking for employment. So I'm in favor of this, and I also think it's important to remember that this could benefit from some of our friends and neighbors, if they're looking for potential employment opportunities because, of unfortunate circumstances in their lives.
Okay, anybody else?
I think we
You're
just
on,
need
John.
to remain competitive. I think we discussed this already. We need to remain competitive in the pool here. This
Yeah,
is
I
good.
agree.
All right, take a motion.
I recommend the school committee vote to approve an increase in the substitute teacher rate from $75 a day to $90 a day, effective at the start of the 2020-2021 school year.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
No.
Okay, sorry, Maria, you had something?
No.
Okay, all right, we'll take a vote.
I said no.
Okay, so Jeff,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
Donna,
Aye.
aye, 5-0. I just wanted to point out too, we did at the time talk about the nurses substitution rate. So that's good. Superintendent, we're going to put that on the next agenda.
Yes, I'll put that on the next agenda. When we were putting this together for the day-to-day subs, I honestly forgot about the nurse rate increase. So we'll write that up as a separate vote and have that for you at the next meeting.
Okay, great.
That also wouldn't take place until the fall, so it's not a timing issue.
Okay. All right. Financial reports.
Yeah, a couple of financial reports. I'm actually going to ask Joanna to review item number 10 with us. This is the fiscal 20 third quarter financial report for the school. So Joanna, do you mind walking us through your report?
Okay. So it's the same set of reports that you're used to seeing each quarter. Year-to-date budget report and a cover memo with variances highlighted, the grant revolving fund summary, and then the student activity account balances by club for the high school and each middle school. So I wasn't going to read you the report. This is going to kind of point out that we're still very favorable through the 3 quarters, mainly on labor, and those variances were revealed very early in the year. And they've just continued, and they are even growing. One of the areas that's pretty hard to predict is the approved unpaid leave of absences. So that's kind of the number that's growing. The other area that is a new variance is day-to-day subs are becoming very favorable, and that's because of the school closure. And special ed tuitions remain on target. Actually, they're under budget. And so that's another favorable variance that we've highlighted and we'll keep our eye on, and that has an impact on our offset to circuit breaker. The other thing that's new is the circuit breaker number actually went up a little bit, 21,000. There was a little supplemental funds from fiscal 19 that they sent to us March 9th. So the circuit breaker number is a little bit higher than reported in the last quarter. So any questions on the local budget financials through the third quarter?
Anybody have a question?
No.
Just Joanna, looking through the munis report, and it's probably something taken care at the end. The foster transportation,
Yeah.
it's 500%. I don't.
Right. So we have, and that number will actually probably change because we haven't, when I did this, we haven't changed any of the purchase orders for things that will go down yet.
Okay.
I'll be working on that over the next couple weeks and present a draft to the superintendent. first, and then we'll bring it to the next meeting. But, you never know the foster transportation, what it's going to be. So we just kind of put in $10,000. We do have a family that has 7 foster children all over this part of the Merrimack Valley. So we are 100% responsible for for paying for that cost. It's not cost shared like homeless. So you're right, it is pretty high. And then, but right now the state has determined that it's best that they stay here. And then Amy Reese evaluates with all the parties to see what's in the best interest of the children for going forward.
All right. Any other questions on the budget? Fiscal 20 budget?
No, just, not to reiterate, but we're in very good financial shape for the current fiscal year. I have no concerns with budgetary salary accounts or non-salary accounts. And we'll look to firm up that projection for the next meeting and likely bring in some one-time spending requests that are in line with our budgeting overall. But I'm very happy with where we are in the process. And Julia and her staff putting this report together, it's not easy. There's a lot of time that goes into it. And just want to thank her for her work on this.
I don't know which
Maria,
hand's gonna-
question? Yeah.
Okay, sorry, John. Okay, so question here. When I look at these, the total, it looks right now we have about 782,000 that's over that we haven't used up in the budget. Is that what it is at this time?
Well, we haven't done the offset for special ed tuition to circuit breaker yet.
Okay.
So we do that at the end of the year. We'll do a pretty significant journal entry transferring actuals from the local budget to the circuit breaker fund. And when we do that, so that'll be, between $2 and $3 million entry. And then once we do that, the plan would be to land right on the 61 million.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So no votes needed here.
No, that was just the local operating piece.
Yep. Okay. All right.
And then the grant and revolving fund summary, that's the one page with the grants at the top, and in the middle is some, the entitlement grants are at the top, and then down below are the revolving funds. So everything looks in pretty good shape with the exception, but we had planned for this, athletics. And we had budgeted in the local budget about $20,000 for coaches' stipends. And I have not made that entry to move some of the coaches' stipends from the revolving fund over to the local budget. So as soon as I do that, I was planning on doing it in the fourth quarter, just to see where the overall coaches' stipends landed in relation to the fees collected for the sports. But given that spring sports have been canceled, we know what's going to happen there. So I'll just make the entry to move some to the local budget, and then that fund will be okay.
All right. Any questions? Okay. Very good.
And then the last set are the student activity accounts it's one for the high school, one for the Parker, and one for the McCarthy. And then it's the balance by each club. So not a whole lot of change from the last quarter. Any questions on any of those schools or any of those clubs?
Can I ask generally? Of course, we're not having a lot of these activities running. or these clubs running, right? Are they still doing it online? What's going on with that?
The,
Go ahead, Jay.
no, you go ahead, Joanne.
I know I've been talking just to some of the advisors and our new financial analyst who does this too has been talking with them. I'm sure the principals have been talking with them more. So I think there is still activity. It's just not as robust as it would be if, you know, the students were in school.
Okay.
There is, I mean, just let me jump in for 1 second. Like the, obviously there's a big amount of money sitting in the high school senior class dues account, which would normally have paid for a lot of senior week activities and, you know, graduation related type activities. That money is technically the students' money. So the students and their class advisors and the high school admin are going to have a talk about, you know, what to do with that. The money is secure. It's sitting there at this point in time. You know, no one's going to spend it until we have a plan. And I do hope over the next week or two, we're going to be able to figure out if and what we're going to be able to do to support the senior class. And then they can figure out how they'd want to fund it, you know, what they want to do with the money, because it's technically the students' money. You know, we need to defer to them with regard to how they want to spend it.
Mhm.
Okay, anything else on the budget? Okay. Moving on.
Yeah, there were no specific votes. It was more just information sharing. And again, just thanks, Joanna, for pulling that together. Item number 11 this evening, Joanna, do you mind walking us through the recommended fiscal 20 budget transfer? There's just one or two.
Right. Yep. Sure. So I'm requesting, it's technically two budget transfers totaling 88,000, but it's kind of for one program. And this is to purchase a new phonics program. And Dr. Hirsch and Kelly Rogers helped me write the narrative on this program. So this is moving funds from 85,000 from the day-to-day sub account. That's favorable to the textbook adoptions account. And then a little transfer, $2,000 for Amy Reese. She has most of the funds in the correct account, but she's just a little short from the contracted services account to the special ed curriculum account to go ahead and make this purchase for this year.
Okay, any questions, Maria?
I have a question on this program. So does it include any kind of online component for the phonics type of what is it? Is it only textbooks or what is it?
Okay, so I can speak to that a little bit. So we had two different things that were happening. We were looking at a phonics program and we were also looking at a reading program. They're two separate entities. And this has no online components to it. This is actually teaching, you know, phonemic awareness and phonics itself to our students, our K1 and 2 students. We'll be adopting it with that group for next year, and then we'll matriculate grade 3 in for the final piece to it. So this is the foundational skills that students do need in order to read. We were looking at our literacy programs this year. We know that we talked to the CPAC. They came in to do a presentation. Kelly Rogers and I had our pilot teachers that were working on both foundations, which is the money that's being asked for today. And then we have two other reading programs that we're looking into. So in terms of online component, there's no online component. This is direct systematic teaching of phonics and phonemic awareness to students K1 and 2 for next year as a foundation of their reading skills necessary in order to be successful.
So I think I just didn't hear it in the transmission. The actual reading program is not this, there's more to it.
There's more to it. So you have phonics, you have phonic awareness, and then you have actual reading program where you're really talking about characterization, text features. There's so much more to read. So when we were looking at our scores and we were looking at how our students were learning, and we felt it was really important to get deep into the phonics piece rather than have just a phonics add-on to a reading program, because it's more of like a word study, and there was no systematic instruction to phonics that was the missing component for us as a district. So we looked deeply into this program. Many districts have adopted foundations. It's a Wilson-based program. So for students that would say be a tier 3 student, some students have Wilson training, or we use OG here in our district, Orton Gillingham. So this is the precursor to it. This is teaching those skills. Special ed, the reason they need funding is that it's called multi-kit skill that we give them. So it's multi-level kits. So if students are still struggling, let's say with the direct instruction, tier 1 in the classroom, the multi-age kits are what the special educators would pull from to give additional instruction to students before we would entertain anything in terms of special ed.
So what is happening in terms of making a choice on the actual reading program?
Oh, that's next. So I'm coming to you obviously with this funding for this piece, because we need to give the professional development to our teachers this year so that they're not bogged down next year with 2 sets of professional development. So right now we met with all of our pilot teachers. Kelly and I we did it like this face to face, and we had them fill out the surveys. Right now, Kelly Rogers, myself, and the principals are just looking deeper into the programs. We have 2 very good programs, so that was the good news from all of this. Sometimes you go into these adoptions and one is clearly the forerunner. So we want to make a good decision this time, right? With 2 good programs, we want to make sure we're going with the best one for us. So we're doing that behind the scenes work, and we plan to bring a recommendation to the committee for May 5th.
Okay. Thank you.
I have a question for Joanna. Some of the money is coming from the salary reserve account. Is that true? Where's it coming from?
Not this time.
Okay.
This is coming from day-to-day sub-account
Okay.
and the special ed contracted services account.
Okay. I just want to check.
Yeah, but I did, I think you read about the salary reserve account in the my cover memo about the variances.
Okay, maybe that was it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, the favorable variances. Yep.
All right. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? Okay. John, we'll take a motion.
All right. I make a motion to recommend the school committee vote at the regular school committee on April 22nd, 2020 to approve these FY 2020 local operating budget transfers for the Chelmsford Public Schools as presented.
Okay. Donna? Donna?
You muted.
Oh,
Is she frozen?
thanks. I'm sorry. Second.
Second. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay. We'll vote. Jeff?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Okay. And myself, aye. So 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. Item number 12 this evening, I'm going to ask Linda just to talk about a little bit. It's a new interpreting service that we're having access to in the district that I think is actually going to go a long way towards working with some of our families who don't have English as a first language, being able to maintain that communication. So Linda, would you mind just talking about this a little bit?
Sure. Kelly Rogers, it was great. She brought this forward. I think actually some discussions too with you, Jay, in regards to this program. So currently we offer interpreter services for our families. What you'll find is that they're typically for like set meetings, known meetings. You need about 48 hours in advance to make those arrangements to have a live person come in. Well, with this language line program, it's on demand and it's 24/7. So you'll have an interpreter available to you. I was actually surprised when we were receiving the PD. I'm like, wait a minute, this is on demand. It's always here. And they're like, yep, 24/7. And we needed to know how that worked. So what we're finding is that, and it's actually been used already, which is great. So this is a more reasonable way to access and talk to our families directly now in the present, which is typically when we need to speak to them beyond the set meetings, right? We know that those meetings are coming. We know what's going to happen in those meetings, but just to have some of these conversations, let's say, for example, around technology. Do they have technology in their home? What are they struggling with? So using this program, we can access someone 24/7 immediately. We ended up having the professional development for it. And what was really neat is that it actually connects to our Google chat. And also this is GoToMeeting that we're using right now. So it connects with that as well. So we can be having, like, just say a face-to-face meeting where we need to talk to the parent through obviously the technology, but we would have the interpreter available as well. So it's not just on the phone. Examples also say, like, your nursing staff that really needs to speak to a family if a child's sick. They can use this program. So what Kelly did is she had made arrangements for all the administrators to have professional development, where we had the, I think it was Elise that was our presenter, and she went through the PowerPoint and really helped us go through the process. It's one of those things, like, you need to follow the steps when you need it. But knowing that right now we've already had 3 staff members use that, a couple of our L teachers were using it this past week, as well as one of our nurses, and they said it was fantastic, it was easy, and it was quick, and it's what we actually needed in Chelmsford beyond that face-to-face piece for known meetings.
Wonderful.
Great.
Did Dennis leave?
I think, what happened to Dennis?
Yeah,
Linda.
I think
He loved it so much, he said that's good to go, or he didn't want to listen to me anymore.
Linda, we have a question. Can special education use this to be an interpreter in a team meeting? Could that service be used?
Yes. So that's what we do now, right? So if Amy Reese knows that an interpreter is needed, you get that, usually a face-to-face person.
Right,
They
right.
can use this process as well. What we did ask is, it's not just open for anybody to use whenever they want. Obviously, teachers that feel it's necessary to talk to parents would just touch base with their administrator to know that this is something that they would need, and it works out very, very well. So I guess we could still do the face-to-face if necessary, right? Because sometimes something might warrant that.
Right,
but this would be available too. This is more for, like I said, those times that you don't have 48 hours, right? You have a sick child, right? You communicate with a family.
Okay.
We're in a situation right now where we're trying to find out where people are at, what's happening in the home, and you need to know now, not wait for somebody to be available.
Right, to schedule someone, right. Okay.
It's amazing. I mean, 24/7 on demand, and somebody's there to interpret. That to me is incredible.
I think this is an excellent service, and here's the reason. I think in this area of EL, the ability for the teacher to build any kind of relationship with a parent or guardian, you have to have the service. Without it, really the relationship is only to the student who is really doing the interpreting, or some other family member or friend who might step in. Second thing is that this allows for a lot of privacy to come into these conversations. There are many times things people do not want other family members to be a part of or whatever, and bringing them into the discussion. Or they may not want the student to be the interpreter because of the type of discussion that they're having. So I think this is really excellent, and that's wonderful. Glad you've got it.
I think one of the other key things with the professional development, although it seemed like it took a while, but I thought it was important, was really just going through those cultural differences. Many of us are not skilled with that, right? There's certain things that in certain cultures, maybe you need to speak to the male of the house or the female of the house. Like, there's a lot of different things. So she was really good about going over what are those cultural differences when you go to make these phone calls, which I thought was a little bit eye-opening for many of the administrators there, because, we're just looking to communicate. We're not thinking of those other pieces. And then also the clarity that has to happen, speak in the first person so that the interpreter doesn't have to interpret what you said first and then interpret what you really want going forward. So everybody was thrilled about it. I think because it's hard when you know that you want to talk about a student, whether they're, sick or not sick, or you want to talk about academics or anything else, to wait. It's you kind of lose that momentum and what the original purpose of the conversation was. And I would agree with you, Maria. Like, I think it connects families a little bit more to the school because you're right, it's usually the students that are doing the interpreting for the family. And, although they're very good, I think some families are concerned about coming to the school or talking to the school. So maybe if they do have these conversations a little bit more with a program like this, they might feel more comfortable coming to the school, right? Talk about engaging families.
Yes.
They won't have that fear of not understanding what's happening.
It's especially true at the younger ages, how important that is to be able to have this. That's great.
So no action on your part required this evening. Just want to share that with you, and we will be able to, Linda, I missed the end of the training, but is there a piece where they can actually give you like periodic usage reports?
We didn't ask for that, but I'm sure we could find out. I can have Kelly check because I'd be curious. I'm sure there has to be because, you log on, right? You can either do it through the app or you can make the phone call through the prompts. So we have a code that we have to punch in. You can't just pick this up right now and start to call them. So I'm assuming they must have that, but I can get that information for you, no problem.
Yeah, no, I was just curious. We can follow up on that, but I think it's going to be a great service.
Yep.
All right, no vote of the committee on that this evening. That was just informational. Same with number 13. Just providing you a copy of the personnel report for the month of March. Obviously, not a lot of activity as March was only half a month, and we're obviously not hiring a lot of staff right now for the current school year. I will let you know that we are going to be moving forward with hiring for the fall because we still need to be attractive, and we want to be one of the first districts out there recruiting and trying to bring some great candidates into the district for openings that we do have. So hiring for the fall is underway. I know schools are already starting to arrange and conduct interviews, so we're on that track. But not a lot of activity this March with regard to new hires to the district right now, just because of the closure. So just providing the March personnel report to you for your information purposes only.
Julie, I know we're moving forward, and I think we're wise to begin you're absolutely right. There are school districts out there already well into the interviewing process for next year. I am anxious about town meeting and getting this budget approved, and, I think that, I think this is it's a great budget. It's obviously student-centered, but I am worried about, what may come of that. And I don't know if we have a plan B. I don't want to, ask these people to take a job and then not have that funding available.
Right. On that note, I will maintain, regular communication with Paul on the town side just to see what we're actually going to even be able to do at town meeting. We're still hoping to be able to have town meeting in June. I know when I talked to them this afternoon, they were talking about remote ways of possibly connecting town meeting if legislation ever passed around those options. We could be in a situation where we're doing like 1/12 budgeting, which I don't think anyone really likes the idea of doing. That could be on the town and even state level. So there are a lot of unknowns. I don't think the positions we're moving forward and filling at this point. These are, instructional positions, teachers who are going to be in front of classrooms of kids in the fall, really one way or the other. I just don't want to not move forward with the hiring for these positions and then end up, not being able to attract the caliber of candidate that we want if we're waiting until, May, June, or over the summer.
Right.
So I think for the time being, I do think we could be, moving forward and continuing with the process, but obviously being mindful of, fiscal, 21 before us. And I'm actually more concerned about 22 a year from now. I think that could potentially be a real challenge for us. But I think we just need to maintain communication with the town side, make sure we're all on the same page of what we're dealing with, and, continue to work through this.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Maria?
Well, it's also part of what you've put in your report to, what we're going to be doing going forward and how we're going to use that wonderful $150,000 that we're going to get, but we're spending millions instead. So it's part of that. So
Right.
It would seem we need to continue to move forward.
Yeah, we're going to go cautiously into the next year or two. We still need to move education forward in Chelmsford. I think we're making very good momentum with a lot of programming that we've put in place over the last couple of years. And I don't want to really step back or slow down on that, on those initiatives. But I think we just need to be mindful knowing that we're going into some unsettled financial times. And we just need to be very strategic in the decisions we make moving forward. But I'll continue to work with staff to provide you the very best and latest information we have. I mentioned previously, no one likes going through these times, but I guess fortunately I've had to go through them. So I am familiar with what it's going to take to get us through the next couple of years. And we'll work our very best to keep momentum in the district and keep things moving forward. Dennis, it's great to have you back.
I'm back. Yeah, I'm gone through 2 laptops, an iPad, and now I'm on another laptop. So yeah.
We just finished report number 13, the personnel report. It's just for information purposes.
Okay, great.
So now we're actually moving into my last report of the night, some school committee policy updates for you. So Cheryl Kirkpatrick in our personnel office actually pulled these together for us. We talked about within the last couple of meetings how we're going through the coordinated program review again from DESE. We had done a big review a couple of years ago. They come in, they take a look at your policies and procedures and make sure everything is in compliance with current state laws and regulations and any DESE regulations as well. And there are different things that change from time to time. So these particular policies were flagged to have updates. And so Cheryl has actually provided responses to 3 of the observations outlined in her memo. And then obviously the attachments are pretty substantial. So we just use documents and track changes just to be able to show you what was changing. But the first observation that DESE had made when they came in, where we need to update some language, was that district policy that addresses access to a full range of educational programs. For L, it's criterion 3 of the DESE reference page, needed some updates. So they've gone through our proposed revisions to school committee policy IHBEA, which is English language learners. And so that was the red line version of the policy you have before you. And we would request and recommend that you vote to approve those changes as presented.
Okay. Do you want to make the motions for those, Dennis?
What's that?
You want to make the motion for these? There's 3 of them, so I'll just take them all separately.
Yeah, take them separately because some are policy, some are our handbook, I think. So
Oh, yeah.
different things. Yeah. So yeah, do this one first.
All right. I make a motion to accept the proposed revisions to the school committee policy by policy IHBEA English language learners. That was tough.
Second?
Second. Okay. Any discussion on these changes? Just looked like they added some new sections on placement and instruction and testing and all that type of stuff.
Yeah, we do these things. I think you just need it to be updated in your policy. So there's nothing here that suddenly makes us do something or we weren't in compliance. It just wasn't, I think, in your policy.
Yeah,
This is the basics of the program.
Yeah, I was gonna say, this is pretty standard practice.
Yeah.
We have been doing it, absolutely.
one of the things when you're going through these coordinated program reviews is DESE will actually come in with a checklist, and they're basically looking to crosswalk what the DESE requirement is to the to your policy or procedure or whatever's before you. So basically, this isn't stuff we're creating like you indicate. We're actually doing this. They just want to see the language in the policy actually conform to their area of checkoff. So that's what's before you today.
Any idea why our MASC policy service that we use didn't flag this?
No, there's no, I don't have a quick answer to you on that. You may have other districts who don't necessarily have this in policy. It may be in more of a procedure that wouldn't have been approved, but we actually have this in policy. the stuff that comes out of DESI's coordinated program review changes. I mean, literally, we just got done one, and a year later, stuff has already changed. So this even changed since the last time they came in, or we would have already done this. So this revision or this new requirement is basically less than a year old. So I assume it happened after we did our DESI policy, our MASC policy review.
And then can we get a copy of that coordinator review report?
Yeah, we don't have it. We have the last one that got done, I shared with you, that concluded like a year and a half ago.
Yeah.
They were set to come in at the end of April and begin their review. So we were doing this prior to them coming on board because we know this is check-offs. So as soon as they come into the district and complete the program review, you'll get a copy of that, all of the findings and our responses.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, anything else on this policy? Okay, we'll take a vote. Jeff?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0.
Thank you very much. The second one is related to some student handbooks and codes of conduct. These are, again, these aren't policies, but you on an annual basis approve the student handbooks and codes of conduct, and some language needs to be clarified pertaining to discipline and explicitly stating that students are provided an opportunity to make academic progress even if they're suspended or expelled. So as Cheryl indicates, to address this particular finding, we recommend that you vote to approve the proposed revisions to the student handbook. And again, they're already incorporated within, and the proposed revisions to the CPS discrimination and harassment grievance procedures.
All right, so I make a motion to accept the proposed revisions to the student handbook and the CPS discrimination and harassment grievance procedures.
Second.
Second. Okay, any questions on this one? Okay. All right, Jeff?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Maria?
Aye.
Donna?
Aye.
Aye. 5-0 on that one.
Thank you. And then the third and final one is some updates that are required regarding the use of physical restraint on the special ed front, criteria 7.1. This was a significant red line or change because this has actually changed quite a bit from DESI and even in the special ed world over the last couple of years. So to address this one, this is actually the special ed attorney, Tom Nuttall's office. He's the attorney that handles all your special ed issues. They basically reworked this policy from scratch. So that's why the red lines are so significant. But this has been reviewed and is being proposed by your attorney for SPED, Tom Nuttall.
Can I ask before we take a motion on this one? Is this a policy or a procedure? Because they have a policy reference, but it doesn't reference it. The number doesn't fit. Our policy is JKAA, but it's not anything like the red line that we have there. I don't know if this is a procedure.
Can you hang on 1 second?
Yeah.
I had the same question.
Yep.
So this new one is definitely going to be a support, it's a policy and a procedure. It's got both headers in it. I don't know necessarily that this actually was included in the previous MASC review of policies. The district has always had a policy and procedure on this. I just don't know if it was at the school committee level. It would be much easier if that was the case to have this be incorporated into the MASC structure. So if you vote and approve this, this would not only cover us for the coordinated program review, but I would forward this to the MASC people and figure out where it should be codified within their record and have it included within your manual.
Okay, because we do have a policy, JKAA, but again, it's
So if you read the language on the proposed revision, it actually says this is a new policy.
Yeah, but it has a lot of procedural things in it, so I think that it would need to be sorted out a little bit.
Yeah, we might have to table this one to figure out where it belongs.
I don't have a problem tabling it. I think it's going to be a new policy, and it says specifically it's a new. So that's fine. If we want to table it, though, I'm fine with that.
But where does it fit with our old policy, and does it take, does it replace it? Does it?
Right, and if you go to the end,
Well, it's the
It says the
regulation.
policy did major editing that document includes the new policy followed by the policy and track changes followed by the old policy. So yeah, I think we need to get it looked at. It's not super clear.
because the final changes are more procedural than they are policy.
It's the regulations. It's DESI's regulations. So that,
Yeah,
that
I'm talking about the sign-offs and things like that.
We gotta figure out, yeah, where it fits. So can we just get some clarification on that one, Jay, and maybe vote on this one next meeting?
Yeah, that's
Okay, all right. Is everybody okay with that?
Yeah, can I just want to say one thing on this, though, wherever it falls, I do think that going forward in light of COVID-19, that we probably should take a look at some of our procedural things with regards to restraints in terms of hygiene. Sometimes kids spit and stuff like that. And, making sure that the area is cleaned up and that staff are taking the necessary precautions. So just saying there's body fluids involved sometimes.
Okay. All right, so we'll table this one for the next meeting and.
yeah, we approve the other two. We'll table this one, then I'll bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay, great. All right.
And that's all I actually had this evening.
Anybody have any liaison reports?
The Parkerville PTO is going great. So it's just me and my wife. We're doing it.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. Any new items people would like to bring up?
I got a couple. One is I do want to make sure that we include some type of feedback process, just that, at some point down the road that we're making sure that we're, developing a process for being able to get that. I do think, it is, Jay, if you wouldn't mind, and I think we already talked about this, reaching out to the principals to see if they might conduct a parent forum or question and answer or support group, whatever, maybe through their PTOs or in combination with. I think that there's some stuff that may have fallen through the crack right as we were ending, Dennis. And I know that, Jay and I were talking about the standards-based report cards, and we thought, I couldn't remember if we had the meeting or not. But just to go back and make sure that we didn't leave anything undone from that time.
Yeah.
As we kind of shifted focus.
That meeting did not happen.
No, yeah, I know, but I'm trying, and I was thinking, well, like, what else did we maybe, in the process of kind of shifting gears a little bit, maybe we left undone or overlooked. Hang on. I'm going to throw this out there, just see what you guys think, but I would actually like more meetings right now. I'd like to have more meetings because I feel like I'm getting a lot of questions from parents and even more, I actually, I'll openly admit I've been overwhelmed with feedback from parents, and it's phenomenal. And I have been negligent in getting back to some people because there's just so much to manage. And I'm just wondering if we could have more meetings to be able to discuss some of the things that we're working on and give updates and things like that. But I feel like particularly at this time where people are so anxious and concerned and stressed about what's happening, I feel like if we were meeting more to maybe discuss some of these things, that it might help. And then I'll leave the other one till we discuss that one. So.
All right. Anybody else or any thoughts on?
If we add meetings, which I'm not for or against right now, but there has to be a strict time limit to it. I mean, there has to.
Like an end time?
Yeah, like 100%. If we're not doing general business, if we're just doing, if we're doing a meeting every week, say, we shouldn't have as much business every week. And these meetings are tough. They're tough to add on to a schedule. So I'm one of the parents that has feedback on this stuff. So.
Okay, I mean, as it's scheduled right now, we have a meeting, we don't have a meeting on the 28th, which April we're on, so we have a meeting on the 5th. Do we want to schedule something for next week, or do we want to see what kind of feedback we're getting? And
I'm not opposed to waiting, because I do think we need a little bit of time to hear back from the commissioner. He's supposed to be giving us another update, right, Jay? And one more by the end of this week, you said, I think?
Friday,
Yeah,
you
we
said.
talked to him Tuesday morning, and basically as I indicated before, every time we have a press conference, there's more questions that come out than get answered. So we are, by the end of this week, early next week, hoping to get some guidance from them with regard to what distance learning will look like for the rest of the year. If the state is going to come up with their own kind of power standards to have us be working toward. We are looking for some direction on that. And then I do need some direction on exactly what is going to be involved with this extended closure as far as, staff coming back to school to be able to retrieve things, students along the same, when we can start preparing for summer cleanings, things like that. So over the next week or two, hopefully we'll hear back more information.
So Dennis, my recommendation would not be meet next Tuesday, and then we're on for the Tuesday after that, I believe, right?
yeah.
Then, maybe decide on a meeting by meeting basis if we need additional meetings in between. But I do feel like, we have a big responsibility here to the community. And I think that, to keep them updated and to be able to be, taking feedback and sharing feedback as publicly as we possibly can. So.
I think that this is really true, what Don is saying. The problem is that first, these meetings also take quite a bit of time to organize and bring together. And I can see that for the administration that this is true. Secondly, there needs to be time in between to develop whatever the changes are going to be and what's going to happen. I think the problem is, Don, and I'm feeling the same way. We're getting a lot of it's not a problem. It's actually wonderful that people are providing input and that they're reaching out to whoever they feel they can actually give the input to or want to give the input to, or might be people that will talk about the issues at our meetings. And I think one of the reasons this is happening more is because there are not other avenues where they can reach out to us. It has to be this way. So we can't provide immediate answers, but I think people realize that they're giving us their input because we'll keep it in mind as we go forward in making decisions. And this is why during this meeting, I've mentioned a couple of times that I think it's really important to make sure that we get the parent perspective at the lower grades and even at any of the transitional years, that we make sure we involve the groups that are usually involved in whatever the activities are and the things that happen in those transitional years. So, I don't know what you're going to do. You're going to reach out to principals, you said, and see if there can be some joint PTO meetings or provide an avenue to do those kind of PTO meetings, something. But one of the reasons we're getting this more is because there are no other avenues to do it, which is really good. This is great. They're coming directly and they're mentioning the points. And I love to be able to say, this is what I heard and this is what people are thinking. It's wonderful. But it's also because people are thinking ahead of us. And they're thinking ahead of what the decisions might be and what they think might need to happen, which is probably what we're doing as well. But I think that's why the avenues are not there. I do want to mention somebody else's comments on comments, but okay. So on meetings, I would say that we don't have another one next week and that we have one on May 5th and then make a decision whether we need, just like Donna said, meeting to meeting.
Yeah, I think we should discuss it, just ahead of time. And I've been, so the feedback I get, I've been providing directly back to the administration rather than waiting until the meetings. I've had a conversation with Jay and Linda about a bunch of different things, and then providing feedback to the parents. But I don't know. We'd have to put some thought into it.
All right, anybody else? So we'll go with the 5th as our next meeting, regular Tuesday meeting. And if anything, outstanding comes up in the interim, I'm sure the superintendent will let us know what's going on. But okay, anybody else have any other new items they want to mention? I'll mention again, make sure you fill out your census reports if you haven't done that yet, so we can get our funding. All right, so moving on, anybody have any other public comment they want to share at this point?
Donna, we also received another joint letter, and that was from the Lopeses with their input from the last meeting they listened to. So I'll just mention it. This is really a lovely comment, and it's an example of folks who, we're getting a lot of views in our meetings. People are actually following what's going on in our meetings, which is really nice. And these are parents who have seemed to me outstanding students who have gone on to very good schools. And they were very appreciative of the fact that we listened to the input of students, and that was the survey that Linda presented, the results that she presented from the student survey. They agree that a lot earlier, there's going to have to be discussions with parents about leveling and where leveling comes in to the system. This was part of their input. The other is that they really think the AP Capstone program is an excellent program. However, they would highly recommend that in the history and English departments, we do require a basic research paper, and that each student had to do just a basic research type of paper without providing opinion in that research paper. And they said overall they have been very pleased with the education the children received as part of the school system. But they were listening, and they listened to that survey result and wanted to give their own feedback.
Okay, anybody else? Any other comments that you received? John, are you?
Hold on, I got kids.
Okay.
Like to see kids. Hi.
You want to see them too?
Yeah, I like children. We don't get to see them.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice.
They're on TV.
All right, I got to finish my meeting. I'll be right up, okay?
Okay.
We'll do a story.
Good night.
All right, on that note, we have a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Oh, second, sorry. I was thinking about kids.
All right, Jeff,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Maria,
Aye.
Donna,
Aye.
aye. All right, that's
Thank
it.
you, everybody.
All right, have a good night.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Okay, guys.